Lively group tonight. All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order for Monday, June 3rd, 2024. Administrator Chansky, call the roll.
Ball.
Present.
Jensen.
Present.
Maroney.
Present.
Scott.
Present.
And Zierden.
Present. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Go ahead and move on to, do I have an approval or amendment of the agenda for tonight?
I'll move to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Move on to open forum. Does anyone want to come up, state your name, address?
Bill Toft, Green Scene Drive, Breezy Point. I'll make two quick comments as I see the agenda is big. First comment's about a community center. In the master plan that you folks are going to be looking at tonight, almost half of the pages are allocated towards a community center, and I don't know, I don't understand why. It's my understanding a couple of years ago that the community center project was sent down to the Park and Rec Committee to die. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I heard. I just want to go over real quick facts. $8 to $10 million to put up a community center. Without a pool, it's $250,000 to $500,000 to maintain it every year. With a pool, you're talking $1 million. To break even, you need to charge $250 a month membership in order to break even. And on that survey that they took back in 21, 72% want to pay under 30 or less. Please put it to rest, kill it, be done with it. Watch out for us taxpayers on this. The other issue I want to speak about real quickly, and I'm going to be as respectful as I can because I think intent is been in the right place most of the time with most folks. But the definition in Thorndike Barnhart of lip service is defined as not heartfelt or deep, just on the surface. And I just think signs and courtesies and prohibitive activities is lip service because it can't be enforced. And it has no reflection in our police force. They do a fantastic job. It's unenforceable what goes on down there. They just can't get to it. When you sign that paper, that resolution tonight, it isn't going to mean anything to most of me and my neighbors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Gary Bakken, 29464 Shrubbery Lane. I know most of you. Good to see you. You all look well. I'm for the addition. Believe me, it's needed. The city's growing, and that's it. We got to do it. Three things I want to take. Fireworks. At 10:30 last Thursday, there was fireworks. I went out on my deck. The cat ran under the bed, wouldn't come out. And I listened very intently, and it sounded like it was coming from the resort. Now, I know Bob doesn't do fireworks, but some of his people were doing that. I would ask the police chief, when the fireworks are going off, I hope somebody is on patrol and investigates that. We got the 4th of July, it's against the law. That's simple. I represent everybody out on the peninsula except one person, and they're not here very often. We've had a violation of the statutes as far as rentals go. I'm witness to it, and you'll hear more from that from the gentleman I'm speaking for. He'll be up in June. Lastly, guys and Chief, I stopped a young man. I was out getting the mail, came home from work late. It was 5:36, and I saw ATV coming down the road. I'm sorry, golf cart. This individual was 10 years of age. I stopped him. I moved off away from the mailbox. He stopped. I said, "What's your age?" He says, 10. He had no license, period. Parents' fault. No control. And I wish the police would have seen that. So they're up in arms about the ATVs coming out there. And I don't know what you can do about it, but it's very annoying. That's all I gotta say. Good to see you folks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hello.
My name is Kent Brothen, and I live at 29887 Canary Lane, Greasy Point. I'm on a ATV, UTV golf cart track, front of my house and behind my house. In front of it, we've got youngsters driving an ATV, totally illegal because a helmet has to be on every person on an ATV or UTV under the age of 18. That's a start. And I know so far we've dodged the bullet without having an accident with overcrowding on these ATVs and UTVs. Now, underneath the ATV jurisdiction, there are two classes, Class 1 and Class 2. Class 1 depends upon the size, up to 50 inches. Class 2 is up to 50 to 65 inches, and it's a saddle, not a side-by-side. That's a UTV. And a driver of an ATV, 16 and older, must have a valid driver's license, and I've never seen one pulled over yet to be checked. I know I've talked to the chief about it. It's one of these things that they can't cover this city all at one time with the amount of ATV and UTV and golf cart traffic every day, every night, all summer long. If the product has a headlight and a taillight, it must be on at all times that that vehicle is being driven, and that's not the case around here. I was flying one again today. Brake lights didn't work, hand signal did work, but his lights were not on, actually coming over here. So those lights have to be on at all times, and we should be ticketing these folks until they learn the lesson. And by law, like I stated before, under 18, everyone on that vehicle has to have a DOT-approved helmet. I've yet to see an approved helmet on any of them, no matter what age. We see 6, 7 kids on one unit going down to get an ice cream cone or a Subway sandwich. And who's paying attention? Not the driver. They're being busy because of the other folks that are in that ATV, which are their friends. And I know Grandma and Grandpa say, yeah, go ahead and take it. That's where most of it's coming from in our neighborhood. Now, you can drive an ATV age 10 and 11, but you must be accompanied by a guardian or an adult. At age 12 to 15, you need an ATV safety certificate and still accompanied by a parent or a guardian in another ATV following you. We don't find that to happen in the city whatsoever. So each one of these violations should have a ticket, and we maybe get this thing under control before we have a death. I'm waiting for somebody on the county roads to be squashed. I did not realize somebody was going to talk about the community center. I am definitely opposed to the community center. I know we're not across lake, but a few years ago, my son-in-law, who builds community centers throughout the United States, came here, I won't say by who, to do a survey for this city. It was a 5-figure survey, dollar-wise, and it proved to be negligent that this city could not handle a community center a few years ago. Otherwise, there would have been one built, but his recommendation was 0, so it did not get built. I would like to address a few problems I can see with the miniature golf course. I have no idea who in the heck put it where it's located. There's not a parking lot for no more than 20 cars. And if you've ever gone over to Cross Lake, they fill 20 cars in pretty quick on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at their miniature golf course. And there's not going to be space. It's also situated in a 45-mile-an-hour speed zone. And if you don't think you are going to have problems with golf carts, ATVs, going in and out with kids to play miniature golf with a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, yeah, there's a yellow sign that says 25, but that's not accurate. You don't get penalized for going over that yellow sign. It has to be a black and white sign. And it says 45. Coming down a hill with semi-trucks delivering food, it's a place that's going to be a serious situation. I would like to represent this city as a positive for tourists. We are probably the one big tourist spot is tourism in this city, is our main income for economy. We don't have one banner hanging that says welcome to the city. And I mean a banner on every one of the damn light poles at every one of the damn intersections on all the county roads that says welcome, be it by the season, spring, summer, fall, and winter. And have a welcome to. Even Lonely Little Pequot has them. No, Jenkins used to have them, but they're down right now. The other thing I was thinking about is alcohol in the golf course. I know I would like to see the alcohol be suspended from the resort, only because as soon as I live on the 16th, that's a urinal. These clowns are coming around the golf course with the beverage cart out there, and by the time they get to 16, there is no facilities. So they are urinating in our yards and across the fairway. And it's demoralizing for people that live there. And I would like to see the alcoholic be banned on the golf course. And we also don't know who gets to drink the alcoholic beverage from the beverage cart of age. So take in consideration, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? All right, so we will go ahead and close the open forum and move on to presentations. Chief Sandell.
Thank you. On May 3rd at 10:44 p.m., EMT Officer Kyle Rustad responded to the Commander Bar and Restaurant on a report of a male that was unresponsive. Upon arrival, a bystander was doing CPR with a bartender on the phone with 911 giving directions. Fire Chief Mike Schwankel also showed up on scene to assist. EMT Kyle Rustad used his heart monitor to deliver shocks and resuscitate that patient. A word of note for Kyle, he's been with us for 1.5 years now, and this is his 3rd life-saving award. So that shows how well our EMT and paramedic program works, our partnership with North Memorial. It's been fantastic, and Kyle's a big part of that. So I spoke with the patient last week. He is recovering from a triple bypass and is preparing for his daughter's wedding. If it wasn't for Kyle, he wouldn't be able to do that. So, if you come up, Kyle.
Show family. so we will go ahead and move on to our audit presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So with us this evening is Mary Reedy with Clifton Larson Allen, who is the city's auditor, and she's here to give the exit presentation on our 2023 audit.
Perfect. Thank you for having me tonight. So in front of you, we have the bound presentation, a little bit easier than going through the audit report. You should have that electronically if you do wish to read that. It's good nighttime reading if you'd like. Everything from the PowerPoint does tie back to the financial statements, so if you wanted to do some comparisons, you definitely could. We'll go through the PowerPoint. Feel free to stop me at any time, though. If you have questions, definitely can be interactive. So we'll start there. Page 2, the agenda, quick audit results, the financial results, and then any key issues, summary items that came from the audit. Page 3, overall city audit reports. So we did an unmodified opinion on the basic financial statement, so highest level of assurance that us as auditors can give. Remember, again, your full accrual now for the second year, so they'll be more comparable to prior year and this year. Compliance, we did note 3 material weaknesses. Segregation of duties, obviously small city, just can't separate out everything. The financial reporting process, so we take the general ledger and put it into the bound document. It does get reviewed before we release it to ensure that it's accurate. And then material audit adjustments, so we come in and just help with those year-end entries, especially now that you're full accrual. So these 3 are pretty common in cities your size. About 90% of mine have these findings. So no really red flags. We will keep working with management to cut down on the material audit adjustments. She seems to be picking up very fast, Jeanette. So I think next year it's going to be minimal, if any.
Just to clarify on the audit adjustments, are those what's outlined more in detail in the online version that we got?
Yes, so there'll be, yes, it'll
Okay.
be like a finding and explain a little bit more in detail.
Okay.
So municipal legal compliance, we have to test about 25 pages there, go through everything, make sure the city's in compliance with all of those regulations. No issues for 2023, so clean there. So page 4, overall financial results here. So government-wide revenues and expenses, so here's where we book depreciation, things like that. When you look, biggest piece of the revenue coming in, as expected, is going to be property taxes at 68%. One of your biggest changes from last year was your unrestricted investment earnings. If you remember last year, a lot of that was negative. This year it did bump up quite a bit positive, so that was a shift. And then government-wide expenses here, a little bit of shift here. Public safety went down by about 2%, highways and streets by 4%, and then general government increased up to 27%. So a little bit of shifting there. Page 5, overall governmental funds revenues. So this is not government-wide. This is just going to be your basic financial statements. Here you can see, again, biggest piece of this is going to be your property taxes. Again, your interest on deposits and investments was your biggest change there, up to 5%. It was actually -4 last year. So that did swap with your property taxes, which was 82% last year. Where does that revenue go out for the expenditures? Quite a big shift here. So last year debt service was paid off. So $570,000 was listed as expenditures last year. That went away, so then it shifted all of the other pieces here. So I would expect this would be pretty similar year over year without that debt service payment in there. So page 7, overall month of expenditures in general fund balance. So the Office of the State Auditor wants no less than 5 months. You wait 5 months to get your property taxes. You can see how dependent you are on those. So you want to make sure that you have enough fund balance there to keep being able to pay those bills until you get that. When you look, you are above target as of the end of the year. Okay. Page 8, general fund revenues and expenditures. So we go back to 2019 all the way on the left up to 2023 current. Increase in revenues, going to be an increase in your taxes, so your tax allocation to the general fund. Expenditures are pretty comparable to prior year. Transfer out of about 1.1 million. So when you look at this, it is going to your revolving capital fund. So your fund balance policy is to keep general fund at about 45%. So anything over that goes to this fund. So when you look at your budget, you budgeted at a transfer out about 642,000, ended up with about 1.1 going out. Okay. So page 9, debt service fund, we talked about. So this bond did get paid off early in 2022. So now we'll just consider working with management to go ahead and close that fund balance out. Those revenues are no longer restricted. You levied 105% year over year, so anything in excess can go back to where the council deems necessary. Page 10, here is the revolving capital fund. So this is where the transfer is coming in from the general fund. Increase in revenues, so this fund is holding a lot of the cash, so it gets most of that interest income. So that's why you'll see the increase in revenues here. Expenditures related to the engineering fees for those two projects. This fund does track all of your capital projects that go on throughout the city. So ending fund balance about 4.7 million as of the end of the year.
See, could we go back to the bond payment, the bonds that were paid off early? Is there an obligation that the city has to continue to levy for that bond payment, given the fact that they were paid off early?
I don't think you're required to. I think that you can, just because you were allotted to levy that year over year until that final payment would have been made. It's like you're reimbursing that fund for early expenditures.
So it's more of an option of the council if they choose to continue to levy that debt service payment, even though there isn't
Correct.
a future debt service payment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. So page 11, the cemetery fund here, keep track of separately. Revenues pretty comparable to prior year. Expenditures increased. You had some landscaping services and a flagpole added in 23, and then transfer out about 2,000 for those maintenance costs. So ending fund balance of about 203,000 there. Page 12, Economic Development Authority Fund here. Revenues coming in mainly from taxes, and then overall expenditures pretty comparable to prior year. The bar chart kind of skews it, right? About $3,500 of activity there. Just makes it look like a lot more. Ending fund balance of about 2,000 there. Okay. Page 13, so your one and only business type fund. So sewer fund, overall this is full accrual when you look at fund level. Overall increase of cash about 197,000. Cash flow from operating activity, that's actually a loss of 101,000. Sorry about that, I don't know how that got on there. But you did have a loss, but then all of your other activities does make up for that increase in cash. Overall net investment in capital assets, about 3.6 million there, so that's your infrastructure that you have in sewer right now. Right now you're showing about a loss of 71,000. In that number is about 242,000 of depreciation. So it is not cash flow there, but it is something that the sewer fund should be funding. Page 14, overall total cash here. So the sewer fund, we talked about by about 197,000. Cash increase in the governmental funds by approximately 982,000 when you look overall at those total governmental funds. Page 15, just a few other financial highlights. So the reporting form and the audit do have to be submitted to the state. The new deadline is June 30th, 2024, because you're full accrual. So that is completed. The TIF district, so you had revenue of about 8,000, payments made of about 10,000. So you ended up with a fund balance of about 1,700. There was a prepayment, and we did talk with Jeanette on this one. There were 3 payments made in '23. So going forward, she'll hold off and just do the 2 payments as normal. So for now, that is a prepaid this year, and then we'll reverse it out next year as a payment. Page 16, just overall financial stability. When you look at the general fund, approximately 24,000 positive, even after the net transfer out. Revolving capital fund talked about 964,000, including those transfers. And then the sewer fund still has the ability to cash flow some of those minor projects that you have coming in. Cash of about 4.2 million with expenditures of about 706,000 there. Okay. So overall, hopefully no surprises with the year-end numbers. I didn't know if there were any follow-up questions.
I don't have any at this time. Anybody else?
Oh, thanks as always. Good job.
All right. Okay.
So I would, as normal, we do appreciate a motion to accept the 2023 financial statements as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Well, second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. Do I have an approval or amendment for the consent agenda?
I have a question on that for Administrator Chansky. David, I did look over the minutes, and my comments that were not read into the minutes are in there now, but would you rather have me read what was supposed to have been read at last month's council meeting for the event permit?
I would say, as I think they were related to that, if you're willing to, since we were going to be talking about it again, I think that would be
Yep, that's fine.
appropriate.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to disc golf basket donation.
Good evening, Travis Moser, resident of Breezy on Cedar Street. I've been running the Breezy Disc Golf League since last summer. Over the winter, I developed a program and worked with several local businesses to create a fundraising effort tied to the Breezy Disc Golf League. This program is a multi-pronged effort designed to provide an opportunity for the Lakes Area Disc Golf community to show support for and give back to our Parks and Recreation Department and show their support for our local businesses while traveling here. It's an effort to incentivize the disc golf community to make return trips, thereby supporting and investing in our community, as well as creating an avenue for local businesses to show support for the Lakes Area Disc Golf community who patronize them. We've had nearly 50 unique people participate in this fundraising program so far. These people are from several of our surrounding communities, including Breezy Point, Pequot Lakes, Nisswa, Merrifield, Crosby, East Gull Lake, Baxter, Brainerd, Pillager, Fort Ripley, Hackensack, and Longville, as well as more remote communities such as St. Michael, Coon Rapids, Perham, and Fargo. Several of these people who have participated even acknowledge they aren't able to attend our league rounds weekly, but they simply love the courses here and want to show their support in any way that they can. Our goal is to improve upon the experience at our park for both residents and visitors alike. The first improvement we've identified is the installation of a dedicated practice basket. We've purchased an additional Prodigy T2 basket we'd like to donate to the Parks and Recreation Department, and the basket is valued at approximately $500. This basket will be suitable for players looking to play either of the courses and will help create a safer environment for everyone and removes the confusion of having people trying to warm up on a basket while people are actively playing on the course. I want to personally volunteer to work with city staff on an appropriate location for the basket installation. After this is complete, we as a group will begin looking towards further improvements and amenities which can be added so we can continue to give back to our city. Thank you for your time.
Yes. I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. Where can people go to purchase these badges should they want to continue the support?
The tags that we have available, I carry them myself, so if you were to show up at our league, check-in usually starts at about 9:30, 9:40 Sunday mornings over at the new parking lot. Or if you just happen to run into me when I'm out on the course, which I've done with several people. There's people from the surrounding communities that, they're like, we're not there, but sure, we'll support, so. But yeah.
All right, well, we appreciate it. Anyone have anything else?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to bring up the placement of this basket.
Yep.
In my opinion, should not be in front of any resident's home.
Absolutely not, no. The location that I started with is right next to the parking lot, and then as the entire community gets together and plays, we kind of discuss, where's the path to the new course, or to the old course going to be, and then where can we position it where people who are arriving, playing either can use, but also still be out of the way primarily of hole 18, because as you're teeing off on hole 18, if you happen to drift right because of wind or something, you might head towards the parking lot. Most people never get there, but we've picked a spot that's well protected by trees so that people that are on the tee, you're not in their way, and B, they're not gonna hit you, you're well out of sight. So nowhere near home, absolutely not. That's on the back end of the course. That wouldn't be productive for anybody, so.
Any other questions?
You mentioned both residents and non-residents are contributing to help with the fundraising efforts. Do we have numbers as to how many residents and non-residents are registered to utilize the course?
There's no registration needed. I don't exactly track where people live, but I want to say, I would guess a handful of people that live in Breezy have purchased tags. Most of the people that have are from outside of our community, so they're choosing to invest in our community because they come here and use our facilities that our city installs for people to use. So obviously, as with almost anything, a majority of anybody who does it's going to be, especially as was stated earlier, we're a tourist community, so most everything that happens in our community is from people that don't live here. So it's the same with disc golf, same with Commander, same with the resort.
Do you want to go into what's on the tags for people who don't know?
So most disc golf leagues have what's called a bag tag. It's kind of just a ceremonial, numbered tag that gives you kind of something to compete for. So I'm tag number 1, and you want to get the number 1 tag to prove that you're the best, kind of more of a bragging rights thing. So a lot of leagues just charge a fee, and then you get to join the league for the year, and that's that. So I wanted to go a step further to encourage people to join our league, because this was new to our league this year. In the 4 years I've been in, I've never seen it, but I worked with businesses to get discounts that would kind of like the Patriot card, if everybody's familiar with that. You buy the tag and join the league, and you also get discounts at a handful of local businesses who have agreed to, help sponsor us to fundraise. And then as a member, you can then go to those businesses, show your tag, and, participate in whatever that discount may be. So for example, Commander was one of them. Every Sunday after league, there's a group of people that go to Commander and get lunch. In fact, this past Sunday, we had some tournaments the last couple weeks. This past Sunday, the bartender actually was like, hey, you guys must have had tournaments because, you weren't here last week. So they're noticing that we're there. So it's things like that. Pelican Square, Subway, Commander, Lakes Latte, Dairy Queen, Tasty Pizza, Nisswa Falls Mini Golf, and Played Again Sports in Brainerd. I wanted to work with the mini golf here. It was the first one that I reached out to because it's in Breezy, but he wasn't able to get his business open in time, so he asked me to, work with somebody different, so.
And this is available, right, for everybody, not just
Yes.
for people who play league, but
No.
anybody who would like to purchase one,
Yes.
you can purchase one. So it does support the community, even if you don't
Yes.
play disc golf.
And all we're doing is raising money and finding ways that we can purchase things to donate back to the community, starting with a practice basket. Things like benches, they're not cheap, so they're gonna take time, but benches, signage, things like that, so. Just an ongoing effort. It's something that I'll continue to do year over year and just keep saving up until we can do things.
Well, thank you. I
So-
think you're setting an amazing example of what it's like to contribute back into the community. So I praise you for all of your efforts and,
Thank you.
all right. Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on
So,
to.
Madam Mayor,
Go
we
ahead.
do need a motion on the resolution 2024, accepting the donation.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 13, 2024.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, so we go ahead and move on to cemetery commission appointments.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, we have 2 vacancies on the cemetery commission with resignations of Lisa Baer and Darlene Erickson. Both of their terms end December 31, 2025. We have received 2 applications for appointment to the cemetery commission, one from Ms. Donna Holke and one from Mr. Don Erickson to serve out those terms. And Mayor Zierden has nominated both of them for appointment. So we're just looking for a motion from the city council to appoint Ms. Donna Holke and Mr. Don Erickson to the cemetery commission to the vacant terms that end 12/31/25.
I have a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept those nominations.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Welcome to the cemetery commission. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the plan permitting agreement.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as we discussed at the May 21st workshop where the wastewater treatment facility study was presented, one of the next steps in that process is to begin the permitting process. Start with them MPCA approving the plan, that our plan is acceptable to them and how we want to, the reasons we believe we need to expand and how we want to expand. That process is a lengthy process. And so we had even actually talked about this beginning of last year when we started this process of kind of feeling at the end of last year when we were talking with Woodseth as they're finally working on the proposal of what would next steps be. And so we have a proposal in the packet from Woodseth that they would walk the city through that process on our behalf. It's a pretty detailed and technical process. It can take up to a year to do. So that proposal is for $35,000, would be paid out of the sewer capital fund. There is an additional $9,300, which is an estimate. That would be the actual permit fee that the city would pay to the MPCA should they grant the permit. So both of those things would come out of the sewer capital fund. If there's any questions, I know Mr. Dave Reese with Woodseth is here that he can answer any questions of what that process looks like as well.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal.
Second.
All right, any other discussion?
I just have a procedural clarification. Was my understanding that when we hold workshop meetings, that there was agreement among the council that no action would be taken? As council knows, I was unfortunately not able to attend the May 21st meeting, but based upon the information tonight, it appears as though there was a consensus generated to move this item to the council agenda for tonight. And I guess I'm just looking for clarification as to, are we in fact saying that at the workshop meetings, the council will be taking formal direct action on items? Or what?
I don't think we took an action
Yeah.
besides we knew that this was going to be coming in front of us. And so the action item, if anything, is we discussed it. And so we learned about what the process was. And tonight we have a proposal in front of us, and tonight's the action. That we didn't make an action per se.
So generating a consensus to move this item forward onto the June agenda is not taking action?
I would say yes, because we didn't commit anything. At this point, we could not do anything or do something. And so that's what the point of, a workshop is to discuss, get questions answered. And so we can move forward with it when it's presented in front of us. The discussion points were of what was that study looking like and what are next steps. This is the next step. We could have been here without a workshop and we could have asked additional questions and clarifications, but we were educated already at the workshop.
Well, and I understand that the council might be, but what about the public that can't attend the workshop meetings, that can only attend council meetings. We've now just effectively cut them out from hearing that information and building that same understanding that council now has. By not having that presented tonight, not having the information in front of the council and the entirety of the public that's here, that's my concern. So that's why I was looking for clarification on, are we in fact now taking certain action, moving items forward at workshop meetings, or?
Again, I think one of the biggest things that we changed for workshops is they're now recorded. We attended at 6 p.m. to make it more valuable for residents to be able to attend. I don't believe there was more than 2 people, 3 people. If I can't remember what the take rate was at that workshop. 1.
Yeah.
So we made accommodations for late evening. We posted on the YouTube. We recorded it for anybody to be able to educate themselves if they wanted to be partaking in it. So I would say no, we didn't take action, and we made strives on allowing residents to partake in it. My opinion only.
No, I agree with everything that you just said. That was kind of what we set up workshops for, so that we could have those discussions, get questions answered, and then have kind of that general consensus of putting it on the agenda for an actual vote, which is, like you said, the action. It's no different than putting the brush pile on the agenda. You know, no formal action's ever really taken until we sit here and we vote on it. So I think we had a lot of really good discussion at the last workshop too. Anybody else?
I think early on, we weren't, well, I don't know how many months it was, we weren't recording the workshops, but they are recorded. It's on the website. So there is the ability for taxpayers to watch them.
Which I think are very highly valuable because it goes through our thought process, and it goes through, you know, the answering of questions. And so I really hope that residents are taking advantage of looking or watching those videos because they are highly informative. All right, any other discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the sewer rate study.
So another part of that discussion was we had to do the permitting, but as Mr. Reese in his presentation also presented, that next step is generally also discussion of financing, and where are we financially. The recommendations outlined in the study point to a total cost of, you know, we'll call it an engineer's estimate cost of about, I think it's about $4.5 million, if I'm remembering correctly. All in, obviously that'll change, as Mr. Reese even said, as we go through, you know, time passes and how as we go through the process, designs might change versus what the MPCA and then time and such, but that's the estimate we're working with right now. So the next step on the financial side would be to have a rate study conducted that would evaluate the proposal, what the estimated costs are, where the city's sewer fund is at financially, what we're bringing in for revenue annually, what are our annual expenditures, to figure out where we need to be setting rates to fund a project of this sort. Again, it's the sewer. A fund is what we call an enterprise fund, as Mary presented earlier, so it is not taxpayer dollars. It's those who are connected to the sewer, receiving sewer service, who pay a quarterly fee for that service. So those who do not have sewer service are not paying for that service. So I did reach out to Baker Tilly, who's been the city's municipal advisors in this area, and they put together a proposal that we have before you to conduct such a rate analysis. So we'll be looking at the scope, reviewing the background information, analyzing information, developing a preliminary model. So they said, you know, projections based on income statement approach, including operating revenues and expenditures, yearly cash flow analysis, expenses related to capital investments, related debt. They're going to recommend annual end cash balances and reserve levels for cash flow. And we'll give projected customer growth and future service demands. And then at the very end, develop and review of financial projections. So we'll determine revenues required to provide adequate funding for annual operating expenditures, capital investments, debt service requirements, and to maintain sufficient fund balances. They'll develop recommendations for the financing of anticipated capital improvements and develop recommendations for cash reserves. So this proposal, as it is in the packet, is for $16,500, which will also be paid out of the sewer capital fund, and has an estimated completion of about 16 weeks, as they believe that'll be. It'll take them, as soon as we execute, they should have that report back to us within 16 weeks, so about 4 months, which will give us enough time. The sewer, that'll be probably after the city adopts its preliminary levy, but these are not levied dollars, so it will give the city time to be discussing the proposals, what Baker Tilly is recommending, should you choose to make an increase for 2025. So we'll still have, by doing this now, have time to discuss that ahead of 2025, get input from the public and such as that on what kind of rate increases, if necessary, are needed. So I should include if necessary. Again, part of this study is to determine what's necessary.
Do we have any discussion or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to accept their proposal by Baker Tilly to conduct a sewer rate study.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the unbilled sewer accounts.
Thank you. So during a audit of, oops, where did that? Why does my memo disappeared? Interesting. I'll pull it up. Well, Daniel's got it up there. I don't know why my packet's. During an internal audit of the city's sewer accounts, we found 4 properties that were found to be receiving sewer service, but not being billed for such. We're not sure why. They range as to when they were connected. As to what happened, we did find evidence of their connections, so this wasn't like an illegal connection, but we're not sure what happened in the disconnect from them being connected, COs being issued to them being put into our utility billing system. We have since put in procedures in place to ensure that it doesn't happen again, from making sure there's multiple hands touching things so that it's not just one to here and then it slips through the cracks. So we have redundancy there, so make sure this doesn't happen in the future. Jeanette went and looked at all the properties. Again, we listed them in there for you. The reason I listed it the way I did was, one, not to necessarily out any specific property owner. Again, this is not the property owner's fault. Also, there's an element of a little bit, we'll call it plausible deniability, so that as you're making a decision tonight, or if you want more information, there's no, well, I know the property owner, nothing can be accused of that. So you'll see that what Jeanette did is she looked at all the quarters. Again, we bill by quarter that were unbilled. Also looked at what was the charge for that quarter. So it's not just based on what was the charge today, but sewer rates have changed over time. So what was it the charge in the quarter that they missed? So we're ranging anywhere from 1.5 quarters to 43.17. So Jeanette also did prorate to give people benefit of the doubt. So this does go through Q1 of 2024. Yeah, so the first quarter of this year. You'll see they range from about $111 to that $3,000. For property 4, since the memo was drafted, we actually got some more information. The statute actually does limit going back and rebilling to 7 years. So this one, 43 quarters, that's about like 10, almost 11 years. So we did run for property number 4. The max the city could seek to get reimbursed is not $3,024.92, but $1,985. So we'd only be able to go back 7 years, or about 28 quarters for property 4. So what we're here to discuss with the council tonight is what would you like to do, if anything, starting Q2 billing cycle, which will be, those bills will be issued at the beginning of July. We will start billing these properties from moving forward, but the question we're looking for tonight is what do you want to do for all unbilled? It is not uncommon that when these situations happen, cities go back, and the city of Crosby just had a similar situation with a commercial property where I think that one was like $11,000 that they were missing. So this does happen on occasion. We try to do our best to avoid it. It's one reason why we started doing these internal audits to try to avoid missing things, making sure people weren't being underbilled or overbilled as well.
I have a question. If any of these 4 properties would have been sold in the last however long that they've been unbilled, how would that have transferred to the new owner, and would that have been caught?
So how it normally happens, if a property transfers through a sale, they contact us, either the property owner or the title company. And what we do now is, because we bill in advance instead of in the rear like we do, we will issue a refund, because they've actually, we bill in the rear, not in the advance. Sorry, the other way around. So we don't issue a refund. What we say is, if they say, I'm moving out tomorrow, we say, okay, so much of the quarter, Jeanette goes, so much of the quarter has been expended. Therefore, your prorated fee is this much. We issue them a bill for that much, and then start.
But would you have known that, though, is what I'm saying? So, like, if they didn't know they were getting, quote unquote.
No, we wouldn't have known this, because normally, again, we rely on the title company doing a title search, or the property owner coming to us and telling us that it changed hands, which happens pretty much any time a property changes hands. We get a title search every single time, so we know when properties are changing hands. So when that title search comes, Deb does those. She sees that they're on sewer. Jeanette produces what that final sewer bill would be, and that gets sent.
Okay. So this was in the system, it just wasn't.
These properties, and we quadruple checked, they just aren't in the system, period.
So my follow-up question would that be, has any of these changed hands since sewer hookup? Do we know that at this point?
I can't say that for certain.
That's fine.
I know at least one of them has not. I can't say that for the other 3.
Okay. In the 1.5 months, that'd be a quick turnaround. In these cases, is there paperwork on file that they requested, obviously hookup and signed off, that they acknowledge that they're being hooked up to sewer? Is there a paper trail that it was to be hooked up, we just didn't get it to the billing?
Correct. Whenever the property gets hooked up, there's like an inspection sheet that gets inspected, that gets signed. So we have that for all of them.
So any of these being hooked up, they knowingly wanted to be hooked up, signed off on said item, just haven't been billed.
Really, it wasn't on the property owner's end. It was on our end that for whatever reason there was a disconnect from the time either the sewer was signed off on or the CO was issued to it getting put in our billing system.
Okay.
I recently was working with the city of Brainerd, and something similar came up with a tree removal from 20 years ago. It was missed by the city, it was missed by title, and they waived it. It was like $3,000. So at this point, I think that is our mistake, and I would be in favor of waiving all of the unpaid sewer amounts and moving forward, have them start making payments.
I couldn't wholeheartedly disagree more with that. I mean, Councilmember Maroney just asked the question as to whether the property owners knew they were connected to municipal sewer. Property owners knew that. They understood that. Yeah, maybe there was some oversight on the city staff's part for not having gotten that property in the billing system and the things that were necessary to send them out an ongoing bill, but they're connected to the service, they use the service. I don't know why we would want to entertain any consideration of waiving.
Yeah, and that's kind of built on why I asked that question, because they signed off knowingly that they're getting established on it. I would certainly say we can work with them on a payment plan. I'm not expecting a full payment tomorrow, but if it's something that we can work out that within the next year that it's paid off of the dues, that would that's where my mind was rolling with. Obviously, on property 4, we have a limitation that we can do, but that's where my mind was going, is work with them on the past due. Obviously, Q2, bill them for the monthly, but on past due, work with them to make it right over the next year, having that paperwork.
I agree with Michael and Brad. I think we work with them on payments, but they should be paying. We have the signed document that they hooked up. So
I think I would like to know more information about what that actual, when they sign that and what that all entailed. Has that changed, before I just think that.
Can't unconnect from sewer once you're on sewer.
No, I meant like, what is the document that they actually signed? Do we have that document that they signed?
The sewer inspection?
The sewer, like, do we have that
We'd
paper
have to
trail?
go into the property files. We have that in their property files. That's where they're kept.
So you have all 4 properties that have,
Yep, we have the sewer inspections.
okay.
All of them.
I would like to see those before I think I would make a decision too, because I don't know what those say, especially from however many years ago there are. But I think there should be some kind of, whether that's a partial amount or whatever that looks like, the city still made a mistake. And I think that anytime that you make a mistake, especially in something like this, I think that something should be granted to that resident that, I'm sorry, we made this mistake, yes, whatever that looks like, but I don't think that we should just say that now you're just required to pay it all in full, whether or not that is a setup of a payment plan or not. I think that I need more information before I would agree to just say that you have to pay for everything.
Dave, on the other 3 properties, I'm guessing that we're talking about less than 7 years, the amount of time that it's been unpaid. Do you have any for the other properties, what the time frame is?
Yeah, so,
The unbilled.
yeah, the other
the
ones were between 2020 and 2023. So that's where it's, 1.5 unbilled quarters, 6 unbilled quarters, and then one's 14.5. So between 4 and 2 years, 1 year and a half.
I guess I'm more in agreement with the mayor, just because it was our mistake and these were never on the system. It's not like it was just like, oh, they were on the system, but we just missed billing them. I just think, our average citizen, give them a little grace for us not actually billing them and not send them a bill for like $1,000 because it was our fault. We didn't bill them the $70 a quarter. I guess that's just my opinion. I understand they were hooked up, but they would have probably paid the $70. I know for myself, if I got a $1,000 bill, even if I could make payments on it,
Right.
that's not something that I'd be financially prepared to do tomorrow, so I
agree. I mean, we were in the wrong in some way, so we need to really look at what that looks like. I just don't think that we should just say that, oh, here's your $1,000 bill. But
I'll make a motion to have staff notify the property owners of the full amount due and to work towards setting up a payment plan if that's necessary.
I'll second.
all right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to the ballistic shield purchase.
Okay, rifle-rated ballistic shields. What are they and why do we want them? They are a support hand-worn ballistic shield that's capable of stopping a 30-06 caliber. The reason we want these, Crow County has a TAC team, but they're only available in unique circumstances, and we don't always have time to wait for them to arrive. Our officers are called to respond to violent crimes, secondary assaults with weapons, domestics with weapons, and sometimes suicidal people with knives, and if there's others in the residence with them, we have to make entry to make sure those others are safe. These shields would give our officers an extra level of protection, having to walk up to one of these residents. We've had recent incidents with domestics with firearms used where that would have become very handy. Officer Rustad is a prime example of this. He was the first officer on scene the evening of the double homicide-suicide. They had to make entry to make sure there were no other victims in the house. and to make sure a suspect wasn't on the loose. So if you asked him, I would assume he would have welcomed this tool. So with that said, I am recommending the use of the 2023, pardon me, Minnesota Public Safety Aid funds to make this purchase. And this is no Breezy Point tax levied funds going towards this purchase. Also, Sergeant Garcia applied for and got a grant from Sourcewell, a matching funds grant for $10,000. They have a limit of $10,000. And I just found out this afternoon that we did in fact obtain that grant. So that drops the cost $10,000. So I am recommending that you approve the purchase of 8 ballistic shields at a total cost of $28,300.32, minus the $10,000 we're getting from the grant, and using the public safety aid for the remaining. Any questions?
Good job on the grant.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the 8 ballistic shields.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor of the aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the city brush pile.
This is an item that was requested by Councilmember Scott for the council to discuss the brush pile. I'll just give a little brief history about the brush pile and its current location. Attach the current rules that are posted at the brush pile, as well as a GIS map of the location, if anyone was not aware of that. Other than that, Councilmember Scott, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Also, really appreciate the background on this too. I knew that the brush pile had been moved not that terribly long ago, but I wasn't even sure myself as to the number of years since that was done. Really wanted to bring this forward primarily for concerns that I've been hearing. And without an ordinance in place on this, I can see how it gets difficult to know kind of what's permitted, how that site is to be used, and then I guess from an enforcement standpoint, how we approach that. The concern that I've been hearing from a number of residents is around the use of the site for private contractor use. A lot of it really is centered on, as any community, residents start aging out of being able to physically do some of that yard work, they have no other choice but to use a private contractor. And if we're arguably not allowing that site for dumping for a private contractor, I think we might have an issue of accessibility under Title II, which is the ADA. So, but that said, I guess I don't know pragmatically, Joel, what the actual operational rules are in that way. I understand we don't have somebody out there.
Correct.
During kind of the core daylight hours to help monitor and kind of.
As far as monitoring goes, the only monitoring we do is while we're out there actually working on it, roughly an hour a week, maybe. Wintertime, we're not out there at all. So, 6 months of the year, we're not there. And it was, if we see anything obvious, the tricky part is, identifying who's who. There's private contractors that run in a plain pickup truck with a dump trailer, and there's people that, say Mike's Tree Service on the side, that it's very obvious, and it's hard to speculate, the actual use amount. I will comment, generally speaking, all users have been very respectful, not excessive amounts of inappropriate materials. Other cities I've worked at, not the case. I find our citizens in general are very respectful people. We don't have graffiti. A lot of problems we have in other cities and parks I haven't encountered, but the use has grown quite a bit. And the discussion when it was initially formed, that we were actually, if I recall the discussion, we kind of figured there'd be some day where this discussion will happen based on, word of mouth, use gets out, and it's going to go up at some point. So that makes.
So I live next to the brush pile, and this has been an issue. Actually, that's why I had this put on the workshop last council meeting. This was under a workshop item, potential workshop item. I think from what I've heard from my neighbors is mostly centered around the fact that brush piles are not covered. So a lot of the trees fall off, branches fall off. A lot of citizens have to go out to the middle of the street to clean those up, and then the speed at which I had a contractor make the wrong turn and turned on our road, was a dead end, and ended up not realizing it, slammed on his brakes right before he basically would go off a cliff next to the. Yeah, so it was quite the interesting experience. But I think that as we had this on pending workshop items, I think this would be a perfect topic to look at as a workshop item to discuss, to really gather all of the real, what are the issues around it, what can we do about it, look at the contractor issue, look at the speed, look at the entrance. So I think there is a lot of things that we could look at to ease some of the burden on some of the residents, especially the neighbors that live around there. So I think that having a workshop surrounding this, maybe a little bit later this summer, would be a good idea.
Yeah, I think several things need to be changed. For one, we use commercial lawn service. We use commercial tree services. 8 units. We use it quite the lawn all the time. I think from when I go there, it's limited, but I see brush alongside the road. A lot of times if I have room, I'll throw it on the back of my side-by-side. I do think we need to look at controlled access. For many years, it's not been controlled. It was on the Crow Wing County website and in small parentheses for residents only. Well, that makes no sense. It's not, I verified with David and I looked and it's not on there, but I think we need to look at it.
I agree.
Taxpayers are paying for it. It's for Breezy Point residents.
And I've driven over there too, and we have a sign that says these rules, but they're so small that you have to literally get right up next to the sign to read the rules. So if you're just kind of driving through, I just don't think it's noticed that people are even paying attention. I do think though there is a lot of people who are not residents that are using this, and that's increasing the traffic for the neighbors. So I think that, a workshop is really gonna help us talk through what are some of the best solutions for this.
I do want to just add that the police department has definitely picked up some patrols looking at the brush pile. I know we've had some officers have had some interactions with some people using it as well. Again, just try to educate that this isn't for some commercial specifically, that this is not meant for commercial. I've received some calls in response from those individuals trying to explain it as well. So I know the police department is trying to get out there more and spend some more time around there as well to help mitigate the issue.
Correct. One of the things to consider is the commercial people we stop and talk to will tell us that they're removing it from a citizen's yard. So you as a council need to decide, is it okay for a commercial business who's potentially removing it from a citizen's yard, is it okay for them to dump there for that purpose? And then the problem is, how would you ever track that?
Right, and if we had a controlled access, we could have some kind of code. So if every citizen had a code, or they were able to give that contractor the code, or I don't know, I'm just throwing out ideas. But again, I think that a workshop would really help us really tease through a lot of these issues and solutions.
I think what you're raising is exactly why, to me, this feels like it's an amenity, it's a city operation that we really got to have an ordinance around, to kind of lay out sort of purpose, reason, and then just everything as we work down kind of the site and how it's used, because obviously no one is interested in having, a commercial building materials, as an example, dumped there. So I don't know if it's possible, if we're going to take this up at a workshop meeting, to have, some drafts of potential ordinances that other cities have to just kind of use
We can
as.
definitely do some research as to what others, I know there's, again, I think as Councilman Jensen said, there are other brush piles that are much more formal. I think specifically, again.
Sartell.
So we look at
Sartell has one.
Sartell. I'm thinking also even just looking at things like the ideal transfer station, the Crow Wing County landfill, what their policies are, because I know Crow Wing County, if you're, again, residential brush, they don't charge for, commercial brush, they charge for. Just get an idea of different size of operations and what they do, we can absolutely do that.
Well, and ordinances are enforceable by the police department.
I think, so at this point, do we just want to move it back on the list for workshop? Okay. Is that,
That'd be my
That's fine with me.
thoughts.
Fine by me. Do we need an official motion on that since it's been on that list?
I do have it on my list. I guess
Okay.
when we get down to the workshop discussion, we can talk about when you actually want to discuss it.
Okay.
thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the Park and Rec Master Plan.
Okay, so obviously Parks and Rec has been working on their master plan for, I'd say, about a year now. They've been working hard at it. They had, must have been 5 or 6 workshops across it, dealing with each section individually, and then held a whole bunch of meetings. They've been considering it on and off and gone through several renditions and gone through it page by page and sent it back to me a couple times. So the version before you tonight is sort of the final version that they settled on for what they would like to see for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. It's pretty straightforward. The bulk of the document at this point is probably the attachments that they wanted to leave on there. The actual plan itself, I think, is, I don't know, it's like 10 pages or something like that. Did you have any questions?
Yeah, I have one just observation. The recommendations for Park 1 on Breezy Point Drive, which staff calls the sad park, because nobody uses it. I asked Joe as to why there was a park there, and he had said because a sewer line runs through it. To be perfectly honest, I drive by there, I walk by there daily, and the only people I see using it are occasionally somebody sitting on the bench. So to purchase, in my opinion, any additional equipment for that park is just not money well spent.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So this park was created before my time on Park and Rec, but from what I understand historically, all the pieces on there were donated by a resident, and I know Miss Williams has more of those details as exactly who it was, but we have not enhanced it at all. We have talked in the past couple of years. At one point, could it be pickleball courts? We've been tossing around the idea of those natural playgrounds. So if we did add anything, maybe we're adding trunks that children are playing on and having a refresh that way. That's been highly engaging over at the Eagle View Early Childhood Playground, where you actually have natural elements and children interacting with that. But we haven't, it's not set in stone or anything. These were more just proposed improvements or more dreams or ways that we can improve what we already have. Just to give you a
Well, I
little.
know pickleball probably wouldn't be a good choice.
Exactly, that's where we came down.
But
We're just trying to think what's the best use of this space, but then it's also right off a street, so who's using it? Are people walking? We have had many discussions, so we've just kind of left it as is for right now.
The benches get used.
I trust you'll make the right decisions on what to do with it. Thank you. Thank you guys for working so hard on this. This is a long time coming, so I appreciate all of your guys' hard work. Does anyone have any other questions on it?
So what was the process leading up to it being in front of the council tonight in terms of community engagement? Were there public hearings, open houses held, were there notices mailed out?
Yes, there was a open house, was that in April? May?
May.
That we had posted a couple months in advance, and we did have all of our information there, a few members, and
I
I
was
believe.
disappointed in the turnout.
Yeah, we had one
really
resident.
disappointed. Yes.
That attended. It was a kind of open house, more informal type option, but.
Was there anything in the newsletter at all on the open house? Did we have an opportunity for that?
Yeah, so in the newsletter that went out, you'll have to forgive me, this was like a month ago, and I'm already on different projects.
The May brief, was it included in the May brief, breezy brief? I believe it was.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it was.
I believe it was. It's definitely been included in the e-newsletter multiple times. I know that for a fact. The actual physical mail that went out, the bulletin, I don't believe we put Parks and Rec's master plan in there, if I'm remembering correctly, right? I think that was elections and some other stuff. Yeah, that was the City Hall project elections and then the golf carts.
At the time the bulletin went out, we hadn't scheduled the open house.
Yes, correct. That's what I'm remembering. So it's been in the e-newsletter multiple times. Obviously, that goes out every month. I've posted every single time we've held a workshop on it. I've posted it on social media, and it's gone out through our subscriber system. That's been going on for a year now. Obviously, I post reminders for the Parks and Rec's the actual Parks and Rec's committee meetings themselves as well. So that's gone out on them, and obviously the agendas are public and everything, and all the videos are up online and whatnot. So, yeah, there's been quite a bit of communication on this internally, trying to go out to the public. I will be honest, there hasn't been that much interest in it, responsive to me. I've put out like my phone number a couple times. I've been like, hey, call me with questions, and basically nobody ever calls. That's not to say nobody does. I have gotten a couple questions, but the general interest in the community has been pretty low.
Well, I'm glad we have this all documented though, and like have this out there, because I do think that, sometimes it is really hard, as much as we want to engage the public and we try, sometimes there just isn't a lot of public engagement, and, but I don't want that to, diminish just the time and the effort that you guys have put into this plan, and I hope you guys feel very proud of it.
To me, public engagement is a reflection of what efforts is the city putting forward to engage the community. My comments are not directed to the park committee, to the plan at all, to the effort that's gone into it. It's more of when I think about a plan being developed over a course of a year, and we provided notice and had opportunity for one open house. I don't know, I'm sorry, that doesn't feel like the city's being overly engaging to the community. I mean, we ought to be putting out multiple opportunities. We ought to be doing everything, possible within our means to get the word out and to get people interested. Because I can assure you, there are many people in this community that are interested in what's going on with Park and Rec. It doesn't mean that they're sitting, able to be at every Park and Rec meeting, but there's a vested interest that's out there. So that would be my slight concern, is how confident are we that we've gotten, as is one of the priorities outlined around communications, how comfortable do we feel working with the community in developing this plan?
Thank you for all of the things that you've put out there on social media. I think that you've done a really great job, the city has, with social media and trying to engage, and I think you did as much as you could. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I'd kind of echo that. Like, we may not have seen the engagement that we always desire. I think we've seen a huge improvement in our communication efforts. Rome isn't built in a day. We've got now e-newsletters. We did our first mailing to encourage people to sign up for e-newsletters. We have YouTube followers. There's a lot of different means that we have now created that I look back 10 years ago, it was non-existent. So we have extremely done a lot more for this. And, Parks and Rec is not a closed door meeting. It's public. Anybody can attend. Anybody can stop in at City Hall and ask when the next Parks and Rec meeting is. They can review those minutes, they can review the videos. I kind of say, you know, as much as we can do as much as education as possible, but unless they really want to be engaged, that's on them to take that next step, in my opinion. We are putting the word out there. We have a lot of communication going out, but we can only do so much without them taking that next step to ask us for more information. And that's them signing up for the e-newsletter, signing up and getting involved. That's what it takes.
Agreed.
The only other comments I have is I too have concerns with the extent of the community center and its presence in the park plan. I'm sure we've all heard plenty, probably more than our fill, on community interest, the survey that was done, the results of that. There was nothing statistically significant about that survey. That survey was not even designed, I'm quite sure, by anyone who understands how to word questions in order to make them statistically significant. To include that in a master plan, to suggest that, I'm trying to find it here and I'm not coming up with it, but like 80% of the community is in support of the community center, when I can tell you that as a resident, I didn't hear a word about it. And I read newspapers and I try to follow things as much as I can. So I don't know, I find it out of alignment that would be something included and passed off as though it's a foregone conclusion that the residents, taxpayers of Breezy Point, to that extent, support the community center. I just think it's misleading.
I think this is a living document, right? This is a living document, and I think that it will continue to evolve and change.
And I kind of go look, you know, I listen to the Parks and Rec committee meetings and they talk about the history. It's not saying, here's what it is. This is more of a what has occurred. And it kind of goes back to what that survey is, and some items were brought up by community members, by council members, of what that survey actually outlined and what it actually means. And I think that was one of the things that, you know, we talked about, of digging deeper into that due diligence package of, can we even financially afford it? Now, items have been brought forward from us from the public, but we've never had staff dedicate their time to looking into it. So when it's part of it, it's part of the history, it's part of the where do we stand today, but by no means is it moving forward to the next step, but it's meaning there is an interest, but we haven't done that full looking into it to say, here's the exact dollars by staff, and having that information in front of it. So being part of the master plan acknowledges that it has been discussed, it has been talked about, there has been motion on it. Whether we believe it's the right motion or not, or the full information or not, it's still part of the history and part of the past.
I agree with Brad. I don't think it should be included in there.
Well, do I have a motion to approve the master plan?
I'll make a motion to approve the master plan as written.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you guys again for years-long work on this. It looks really good. All right, so we will go ahead and move forward to the community garden.
All right, Megan Zierden again. At our last committee meeting, we have brought back the parking rec project, getting some updated bids, but I just wanted to give you kind of the long process that we've gone through to get to this point, so nobody's thinking that this is just a quick decision. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So this started all the way back in March 2022 when the city council actually received a letter of, it was part community garden and also a sustainability piece, okay? From there, the next month it was sent to, that letter was sent to Park and Rec in we were presented with some of these ideas verbally, and we said, yes, we'd like to explore, ask for more development of detailed plans. So then fast forward to June, July. There's things happening in between, master plans and all these other things, but this is just the highlights of the community garden. In June, July meetings back in 2022, we're already starting to discuss locations, and that was also the time of community center possible locations discussion. So it all kind of came, wouldn't that be nice if we did have those things, could they be paired together? Then fast forward to October, that fall, and the person that had written the letter came and actually presented and had a full discussion and gave us like a full packet of what would be a prototype. So we liked what we saw, and then we can go on to the next meeting. So in October, we had asked, could we get at least we had no idea on cost estimates. So in February of 2023, we got our initial community garden estimate. It was a range, I want to say it was 56,000 to 100 and something thousand. And it was a huge range because it depended a lot on materials. Are we using cedar? Are we using all sorts of variety of things? So it was just a really wide, but gave us some sort of an idea. And so then we, in March at the following meeting, agreed that we would like to see the community garden being added to the comprehensive plan for the Park and Rec committee, have it on our radar. In that summer then, we increased the Park and Rec budget, and there was discussion of possible funding to support the community garden, or increase the desire to increase our budget for that. And then November, in our Park and Rec meeting of 2023, we were in touch with some Cross Lake staff. I know Joe as well has been in touch, working with them extensively because they have kind of a prototype, and to get some ideas of what it would look like here and actual cost, the guy that's running it day to day. And then one of our members presented to the community garden to you all back in December. And it was said, let's get some more information on that as well, and then we'll keep going. So we didn't have a meeting in January, February, March. We had a meeting in April. And so we had an update presentation to us again about how the council meeting went back in December. And then we had said, okay, well, it sounds like people are interested in this. Let's go ahead and get an updated price estimate, because it had then been a year, just over a year. And so most recently, we were given a new estimate with some costs narrowed down too. And we had, you guys, I believe, would see community garden cost estimate for May 9th, the one that was given to us. The total showed about $50,835. We did have some discussion of some variables within the fencing, and could we get actually mulch, and how deep is the mulch, and how much do we need, and there's all these different costs. But we felt comfortable. We did discuss building permits, how tall could a fence be. So if you want to know more details, certainly you're welcome to watch our last video, but we did talk about it quite a bit. And not everybody agrees, but it did go ahead and move forward if we are requesting or asking for the city council to go ahead and approve this project. We're hoping it's something that we could have ready to go by next year. There's more work to be done, but this is where we've gotten to where we are right now. And I'm happy to entertain any questions or concerns or comments or anything that you may have.
Thank you.
Is there any correlation to the number of plots and the cost? I mean, I'm just noticing it looks like there's going to be 60 garden areas. If we maybe pared that down in half to 30, I mean, are we looking at maybe 25,000 then?
We had those discussions too. We talked about, well, maybe we just start half, and kind of, we went back and forth. Do we see how well does it turn out, and then we add on? But then there's always the concern of not, typically with costs don't go backwards or don't go down. And so it was like, if we're doing this, does cutting it in half even make it half the cost? No. But it's ultimately up to you guys. And we all had different opinions as members of this committee. And so this is where things ended up being settled. But that was part of our discussion, Mr. Scott, yeah. So this is what the committee came together with. And
in all the presentations, fundraising was talked about quite extensively. If the full amount of money is granted, I don't think the incentive there, for the fundraising, that's one concern I have. I support the project. I think it's a good project, but I think there needs to be fundraising, and, you know, Parks and Rec had 50,000 budgeted from the council if a project, you know, came up.
correct.
So.
Well, and I think part of the trickiness was with the fundraising piece was, it's like chicken or the egg. We can't ask for matching funds until we have a budget to work from. And so this was kind of the initial piece to get that ball rolling too. I don't know, Sandy, if you want to add anything, but.
Sandy, you can come up too. You were a big part of this, or still are a big part of this, so.
Sandy Loughlin, Ranchette Drive. There were many elements into fundraising that we talked about, but we couldn't do anything because you never said yes.
Correct.
Right? So to go for a grant, I had a discussion with Mr. Chansky that the city, you know, I thought, I took a class on writing grants. But then it has to go through the city now because it's a city thing, so understandable. But we haven't looked at any of those options. You know, when it came to mulch, I had called a long time ago different businesses about donations. I can't ask for them, but would they be interested? I know Walmart gives out a big donation. I talked to Fleet Farm. And they do donation. I talked to up in Pine River, anyway, the farm place up there.
Oh, Tractor Supply.
My favorite place. And they would be willing. I called Crowing Power because they do mulch every day. And they said for a project like this, I don't know if you had talked to them as well, but they said for a city that they would be willing to dump chips. Like I do a heavy mulch in my gardens, and I have a service come, and they give it to me for free. And Crowing Power would actually dump those chips, and so you're saving, I don't know, $8,000 to $10,000 off that $50,000 right there. Then there's talks, you know, I talked about maybe doing some kind of fundraising. You know, I had a couple of ideas and found out the cemetery was doing one of them.
Another good idea.
Yeah. And, you know, so we have to get an okay, and then we can start working on that kind of stuff.
So that is our next steps, is we're hoping this is essentially, I don't want to say worst case scenario, this is best case scenario, but this is the max cost. Remember too, a year and a half ago, this is less than what we had originally.
Yeah, you did pretty good from the original estimate.
So we would definitely, and maybe that's how you guys would want to maybe pursue this, is saying, you know, up to a certain amount, or we need to go then start making those contacts within the community to start matching or getting donations. But this is the starting piece.
I think I would be in favor of just granting the full amount, but with the understanding that you're going to go and try to save money where you can, right? So then you have that leftover funds that you could potentially
projects.
use for something else. Obviously, you guys have spent a lot of time and energy putting this together, so I feel very confident that even granting the full amount, so you guys can just go and do, that you guys will try to do, you know, whatever you can to save funds where you can. So I feel confident in your guys' ability to do that, so I feel comfortable granting the full amount.
And I will just say my comments have nothing to do with whether I think you have the capability or the skills to do any number of things, because honestly, I don't know. I trust that you do when it comes to gardening. I would see it this way. I mean, if Sandy just indicated that there's an $8,000 savings just with the wood chips themselves, right?
Well, that would be, I think that was your estimate, right, Joe?
Yep.
That was with the 4-inch
Yeah, which you have to have.
depth.
Then I would almost say, why can't we kind of look to Crow Wing as kind of a certainty that we can get chips from them for
That's what they
nothing?
said the last time I
Right.
talked to him, which is about a year ago now, but, I would assume I'll call every tree company out here and get them
Yeah.
dumped,
Yeah.
I don't have I'm pretty confident of that wood chip thing. Really. I have a pile that's this high in my yard right now. They're huge trucks that I get
Yep.
dumped.
So do we subtract that?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess those are my thoughts. That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, if we know that likely, mulch is going to be provided from a source where it can be donated, then why not operate on that assumption for now? If it turns out to be not the case at whatever point in time, then we revisit it.
So one of the ideas that I was toying around is kind of maybe melding all these comments up here. You say that we need the go-ahead to start asking for those. Is one of the ideas was, what if we say we'll put towards $20,000 every year for 3 years? So we'll give you 20 today to start with, but if you can raise those funds, fundraise, get donations, get whatever it is to finish that project this year yet, that's up to you. Next year, we'll grant the next 20, and if we do need that remainder of the 50 because of donations didn't come in, it's year 3. But that way it gives a little incentive that we are reaching out and trying to gather what we can from those funds and sourcing mechanisms, and we're saying it's gonna be a go-ahead. It's just the matter of either getting the donations or our fundraising the rest of it, and we already talked that it might not be next year, so if the council's willing and we have it, we say 20,000 is granted for this year, starting January 1, there's 20,000, so there's 40, so at that point, it's, 10, 12,000, but anything you can get between now and construction would be a benefit, both to
When were
everybody.
you planning on construction? If you were granted the amount today, what?
I think they would it's up to, yeah, as soon as possible. We didn't know what their workload is gonna be, because it's gonna be that crew.
For
So
next,
we would
yeah.
expect we're hoping for sure by next spring that's well underway, but didn't know if some things could be starting to go in even this fall or this summer yet. It just depends on.
If I may ask staff questions of what involvement is the city? It looks like we have a bid for fencing. Is that the only thing really outsourcing that we'd be outsourcing labor, or?
The water supply, we'd have to bore, because it'd be coming under sidewalks, under the park. Trying to open trench, off this existing well. Do we use the potential of the new city hall well? 350 feet would get us to either position. That'd be bored. Everything else would be pretty much in-house outside of putting the fencing up. Those lower dollar amount items are, they're not picked out because there's 50 different kinds of benches. That dollar amount should supply the items requested. And then as far as construction, late summer, fall would be it's kind of what I'm looking at. I think once we get done graveling in the next week or so, we're gonna switch over to do some disc golf course signage stuff. And then we just gotta get up in the summer routine, and that'd give us a few months anyway to gather funds and, decide, like the different unknown items, like what type of wheelbarrow and, plot markers, colors, the little details you got to do.
How long do you think it would take to construct
Week.
this project?
Yeah. I don't want to delay your project. And that's another thing too, right? If we're saying yes to this project, I want to guarantee that even if you don't get a single thing donated, right? I still want to guarantee for you guys that you guys can move forward with your project. And I think that by delaying that, you know, who knows what that could bring if a new council's here and then all of a sudden now it's, nope, you're not getting another 20,000 to finish your project. I think that for me is a little bit concerning. I think that I would like some kind of guarantee for you guys, even if it's not all at once, the 50,000, but I think that, you know, a week to construct, well, I mean, we may not have until January 1. Maybe they can construct the entire thing this fall. So I think that, you know, this has been on the docket for a long time. This has been worked on a long time, and I think that it's something fun that we're bringing, and I've heard only really good things, and people are super excited about it, and I would just hate for there to be any delay in doing it because we didn't make a decision today because we wanted to, you know, maybe we like the idea of saving, but I feel confident that you guys would go out and get that either way, so I still am in favor of full amount.
Madam Mayor, I just want to add.
Our fencing and the well. If they get that in, the rest is not that big of a deal, in my opinion.
Madam Mayor, I just want to add one quick thing, and just want to make sure, because it was included in the Parks and Recreation Committee's motion. As you see, what was presented here is what Joe presented at their May 9 meeting, but they also did add their motion. One thing they discussed was the fence height. That's not represented in here, but they talked about wanting to maybe potentially go up to 8 feet high if possible. I know Joe spoke with Peter to see from a planning and zoning perspective if that was possible. Peter said it is. Either way that this goes, we'll need to go through the conditional use permit process, so the designs will go before the planning commission to review that. Whether the fence is 6 feet or 8 feet, it's going to have to go through that process. But I just wanted to put it out there that the committee did request that it be look at being 8 feet high. So I think it's just something for you to know. If you make a motion to approve tonight, I think we definitely would be looking at, are we looking at a 6-foot fence or an 8-foot fence? Because it will affect the
I believe it was a $2,000 increase for the 8-foot fence.
Correct.
You have a contingency in there of 5%, so that 5% could cover the cost of that increase in
There's
fence.
an easy way around that. You can, you know, I have 2 different gardens. One has a 10-foot because I'm on a hill, and so deer would just jump, so I had to do it that high. But in one of my gardens, I have a fence that's probably, I don't know, 5 feet high or something, but the posts go up, and I have wire. So you're not doing fencing all the way to the top. I mean, there's a way to do it less expensively for sure. Wire works. So there, you know, that, and then I look at up here like the benches, and those are all kinds of things that I want to fundraise for: tools, wheelbarrows. If we can do the signs, the plot markers. You know, one way, and I don't want to jump on Park and Rec. If you wanted to cut back some of this, I don't know that you need to start. You have the space, but you don't need to have 13 raised beds right away, right? We could add those as years go on and raise money for the additions of those. I mean, it'd be great to have them, but, you know, I mean, there's a way to cut money there. Yeah.
So what would you ask for as like a minimum to really ensure that this project can?
I guess I would request what the committee had sent forward as a recommendation or a request to the city council.
Councilman Ball, do you have
And I
anything?
don't feel comfortable making modifications to that without them, unless we brought it back, but.
What's the location again of this?
Daniel, do you want to pull that up?
Yeah,
Would be those 4 lots.
it's up on there.
That's the large pavilion there to the south. Based off of the current site plan for the proposed City Hall expansion, where the small pavilion is right now, that would actually be moved. That would become kind of new parking area. So where the current parking lot is right here is where the expansion is would go. And then beyond that, a little bit of parking area. So by putting it in this location, again, I think it's a pretty easy place to work. It also would put it within, you know, less than 100 yards of
Easy access.
the parking lot. So for easy access, so that people aren't having to kind of walk in to the garden. It's accessible by their vehicles if they want to bring any of their gardening tools or anything with them.
Councilman Ball.
I'll make a motion to approve $40,000 for the Parking and Rec Committee to move forward on the community garden construction.
If I have a second.
I'll second.
All right, any other discussion?
Just to clarify, 40,000 today, and then they fundraise the remaining estimated cost of 10,000.
Sure, if they're able to, or if there's a need to revisit the amount that's needed out of the Park and Rec budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want to add anything?
No, I mean, no, at this point, I don't need to. I think,
Okay.
I think if we're, to Councilman Scott's point, if we're pretty comfortable on, the mulch side of things, I mean, they can always come back to us if something should arise where they just can't get it, so, and they can request more. So, but I think this will get them, a huge head start, so.
Yeah, I agree. I think 40,000 is a great starting point, so I'm good with that. All right, anybody else? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Congrats, guys. Look forward to it. All right, so we will go ahead and move on to the disc golf course code of conduct.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So at the May 9th Parks and Recreation Committee, the committee also discussed rules for the use of the disc golf courses and surrounding property, which has been referred to as the City of Breezy Point Disc Golf Courses and Recreation Area. That's how it's defined in the newly adopted master plan. The final product is attached, as we're calling it, the disc golf code of conduct. The committee separated it essentially into two sections, one being courtesies, the other being prohibited activities. The courtesies are essentially items that they're behaviors that they are expecting users of the recreation area to do, but they don't have a specific city ordinance backing them up. Prohibited activities are those that are specifically contained in the city code or state statute and can be enforced. What we've done is general process for adopting something like this would be to adopt it by resolution, so you can see it's contained in the resolution. The courtesies and then those prohibited activities, again, those are all, actually pretty much all of those activities, I went and actually grabbed the language as they are used in the different ordinances or statute to make sure that it was very clear regarding their enforcement. So I guess we'll take any questions that the council might have regarding these proposed courtesies or I should say this in general, this code of conduct.
I had a conversation with Chief Sandell today regarding the courtesies. I knew the answer, but the police department cannot enforce them. To me, I don't understand why this is coming to us. We have the activities that are prohibited by ordinance that the police can enforce. And the resolution, currently, they are not even placed on the website. I did ask Administrator Chansky. In the future, they will be. And I just don't see the need for this. The people that are going to be respectful of residents would do so irregardless. A sign is not going to do any good. It just generates more calls from the police. I just don't see that this is going to help or modify the behavior that goes on at times out there.
Okay, thank you.
I guess my thoughts are somewhat of a similar path. I guess, what are we accomplishing by potentially approving the resolution? We've heard sufficiently. We already know that, unfortunately, since the winter of this past 2023 and 2024, with sufficient use on the site, that there's there's any number of activities outlined in here that are prohibited that we still have not come to any agreement on how are we going to manage the use of that site differently to ensure that those violations do not continue. So yeah, I guess that's my question as well. I don't know what this gets to different than what we have already come to understand is the ongoing inappropriate conduct and behavior that continues to occur. This to me, again, just simply comes down to a use of land that is incompatible in a residential neighborhood.
Posting the rules and regulations, you know, regardless if we adopt this or not, it should be just common practice that it should be on there. I think, Mr. Jensen, you alluded that anybody who's going to is going to follow those. You know, we also heard tonight from a gentleman who lives on a regular golf course that we cannot limit, you know, alcohol consumption on a private property. They are exposed to those things as well. And it's regretful, it really is. And we do have law enforcement now. We have the UTV that's been monitoring through there. We have community policing going through there. You know, there are actions that we have taken to attempt to educate those individuals that this is not legal. It is against the ordinances. We've signed it. You know, continuing to post this in more spots, you know, further educates. You will never get 100% compliance. That's why we have law enforcement. You know, we have police for every law out there. We still have driving while intoxicated happening. We can never prevent 100% of those issues. You know, posting more signage. I agree. What does the resolution do? I'm not 100% sure on what that does. Does it hurt anything? I don't think it hurts anything. So I don't see an effort in Valiant to trying something. But again,
I think it can generate more calls for the police department, and they have their hands full.
And it's not law enforcement's job, in my honest opinion, to increase the level of compliance or otherwise enforcement. It is the city council's responsibility. It's all of ours. And to compare the gentleman earlier and issues being experienced with a private owned and operated golf course to that of a disc golf course, we're talking two different games. We're talking private versus public. I just don't see where there's any relevant comparisons whatsoever, Mike, between the two.
Sure. The hard thing with that kind of statement, though, is if this was privately owned, would we not have any discussion?
If this was privately owned, I would like to think it would not have been permitted in the middle of a residential neighborhood. When the golf course that the gentleman spoke to earlier, it's been there for years. It has been there before the vast majority of the homes that are currently there now were constructed. So it's more of, at that point, buyer beware. You understand where you're building.
Downside with
clear difference. Right? Would you not agree? I mean, the disc golf course, the expansion went in the middle of a residential zoned area with new homes that have been constructed. We're talking a completely different situation. I just don't know where the relevancy is.
The point I would go with is the original 9 was done within a residential home area. The expansion of that to the 18 was done within a residential zoned area. And then the expansion of the further 18 was done. Going back to your statement of buyer beware on those who live on the golf course, if we continue with that methodology, development would never occur because development has to occur. You can't tell me that 100% of the homes were built before the golf course was done. A golf course.
I don't think I said that, did I?
No, I'm not implying that you did either.
Well, you just did.
No, then I apologize. Then I'll retract that. I'll go on to state that 100% of those homes that are abutting a regular golf course were not all there at the time that the golf course was developed.
I'm pretty sure that was my comment earlier.
Yep. But also, there were homes that existed before that golf course was put in.
My point is, you're talking about two different forms of golf. You're talking about private ownership operating under an entirely different set of rules and regulations than a publicly owned, taxpayer-funded golf course.
Okay.
I would like to go back to the resolution. I think that as a council, just covering all the bases and just having this in place obviously doesn't hurt anything. I think that it's part of the starting point of just having that foundation and something to point to. So I think in general, just having this is, not sure exactly like you had mentioned, what is the, just having it in place is not going to hurt anything. So I think at this point, we should look at just either voting to approve or not approve.
If it doesn't hurt anything.
I don't think it hurts anything either. I think it sort of sets expectations for what the city thinks that others should be doing out there. It's not unsimilar to any other signs that are posted places like the brush pile. Like, here's what we want you to do when you come to the brush pile. Pick up your sticks. It's probably not on the sign, but we could add it. It's a courtesy. I don't think it's going to hurt anything.
It's better to have than not have.
If people don't know we don't want glass containers out there, maybe some people will not take them out there then.
It's better to have than to not have based on what?
I would like to see something like this in place. As far as the way that it's written, do I have, Ronnie, do you want to see this move forward or?
Again, either or, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 14-2024.
I'll second.
Any other discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. We're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute recess and be back to discuss old business. Is my mic on? To the disc golf event permit.
Yep, so at the last Parks and Recs meetings, they, well, I guess they as a body requested to kind of bring it back and wanted to talk about it some more. A couple members actually kind of brought it back for some varying reasons. What it comes down to is they talked about it for a long time during the meeting, and they made sort of the adjustments on like the first and second paragraph of the first page here. They're redlined for you, so I guess, do you have any questions on them, or do you, what would you like to do?
Does anybody have any questions?
I've got no questions.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions on this event permit. I'll read my comments that weren't read into the meeting first, but the concerns I will address is number one, Parks and Rec said when they sent this permit to council that they did not want it back again. Council approved it on a 3-to-1 vote. I was not at that meeting. And the only reason this was put on this agenda is because of the presentation of the Breezy Point Disc Golf Club member. It's not a need, it's a want. And I think anything there in red should be gone and go back to the original permit that was passed in the May meeting.
I will go ahead. I did have a couple members of the Park and Rec board contact me. After they had submitted this, they did not realize that one of the bigger tournaments that is played is a 2-day, and so had they known that, they would have actually put that in there the first time. So for them, it was more of a after the fact. And then they again said, no, we really want to amend this. So that's kind of what happened. They just weren't aware of it. So that's why it went back, and they would have had this the first time around had they had all of the information.
Well, I think the Breezy Point Disc Golf Club wasn't satisfied with 5 events. They had 2-day tournaments were allowed. Again, no conversation involved how does this impact the residents that abut the course. And I think at this point, just for the record, I'll read my comments that Administrator Chansky inadvertently had left out last month that I wanted read into the meeting minutes.
And if it helps at all, Steve's comments were shared in light of the fact that I had requested the council have conversation about the event permit. In fact, I went so far as to ask for getting the city attorney's opinion on ordinance violations not being addressed with what is the city's liability there. Because that's more or less what we have going on, whether people want to acknowledge it or not. And so in my mind, an event permit, we already know that the fire is smoldering when it comes to use and certain use that shouldn't be occurring. An event permit, in my mind, is like pouring gas on that fire. Now we're just saying, come all the more people at one given time and use the property that we know is posing all kinds of issues the way it is for residents. So that was just a little bit of the backdrop.
And that was item 11C. The council member Scott submitted comments on the disc golf event permit, and I fully agreed with what council member Scott's request, and that was to obtain the city attorney's opinion on council's duty to enforce city ordinances, especially violations resulting in a nuisance. Table action on the event permit until council consider the city attorney's opinion and not authorize any events to be held that would require a permit until city attorney's opinion can be acted upon by the council. But again, that they were given 5 events, or there's opportunity for 5 events. They don't need to hold 2-day tournament and close both courses down. So, and then the changes that they took out, events are required to obtain a permit if the number of participants exceeds 40. Well, that was put in there as protection to the residents that abut the course. So basically, that says if you don't have sole use of the course, you could have as many as you want out there, right?
Are you going to tell a family of 41 that one of their people can't play?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's kind of where that came from, is that
Well,
no
it
one
was-
can actually count heads on the course.
There is still a maximum limit of 90 individuals, which I believe might be when I was reading that, I remember it was 180, and this is going back to, you just, and I apologize.
That
I'm
was
building
my
off this.
comments that were.
It was 180 because it was a 1 course per day kind of thing, and we would direct that down to 90 people per event. And if this goes forward, I believe there's maybe oversight that they're thinking 90 persons per course per day.
Right.
So it goes back to the 180 on an event, right? If this goes through, that's one of the things that I caught, that the Parks and Rec talked about having this at their last meeting. But Mr. Jensen, I apologize, you were still reading some things.
Well, I mean, basically then if they're under 90, I mean, this is not the personal playground of disc golf clubs. This was always talked about for 1.5 years, that it was built for the public, it was built for the residents, and then we're going to shut it down. I find it hard to believe that it was an oversight, that they didn't notice it.
Well, I think a 2-day tournament has actually been very popular, especially when people are driving from long ranges away. My guess is that they're staying overnight in our community, and from a business standpoint, anytime that we can have people staying the night and spending money in the city. But from what I understand, there has not been any issues with any of the tournaments. I attended one last year. It's been very respectful. The stakes are higher. The behavior is more professional. So I don't know if I've seen that has changed when it comes to tournaments.
But it doesn't change the noise. It doesn't change what the people that abut the property have to listen to for 2 straight days of tournament play. They're already granted, in my opinion, way too many. But that's not enough.
I think in every city, though, I mean, whether it's a parade or whether it's a street dance or whether it's, anything that's involving the community, you're going to have an increase in noise. You're going to have an increase of liveliness, and you're also going to have an increase in people doing stupid things. I think that, from a community standpoint, I do feel that, that comes kind of with it. But I don't feel that saying, oh, well, you can only have one tournament one day, when a 2-day tournament is actually something that is relatively popular.
Madam Mayor, if I can, I had to make the same correction to the Parks Recreation Committee. The permit you approved last month does allow 2-day tournaments, just on one course.
One course.
So this is changing is saying for one tournament per year, you can shut down both courses for 2 days. So under the permit you approved, some can come in and say, we want a 2-day tournament, both days on one trail, or 1 day on one trail, 1 day on the other. So to clarify, 2-day tournaments are allowed, just one tournament, one course per day.
Right.
It works.
And the one per year is not per organization, correct? It's just
One.
one period,
yeah.
right? And then the 90, you said 90, that's for, if they have reserved both courses, that's 90 the whole weekend, right? Or for the, even if they reserve 2 courses?
So now we're getting into
Well, that, I mean, that's
kind
what
of
we were talking
the
about,
back
right?
and forth.
So is that
It was
45?
It was one,
or wherever
initially
they
it was
play?
180 because the one that was sent to you back last October, again, was you can shut down both courses. Then we came back and said, no, the Parks Committee changed it to 1 course at a time and missed the 180, and so the council changed it back to 90. So now if you want to open it up to 2, I guess you might, and this doesn't, the intent here, initially again, the 90 was 1 course at a time. I would say if you want to allow 90 per course for a 2-day, 2-course event, just to make sure we're making that clear if you approve it. We're kind of going back and forth.
No, that's good, because right now how I read it is it's like this is for an event, so it's whatever you reserve the event for, it's 90 persons max. So if
It's only
it's
one day. We're only allowing 1, right, per year is what we're saying.
Correct.
All right.
But it would be limited to 90 based on how it's written now. So you're concerned about 40 then? That would be 90 max.
My concern is that,
I mean, not that you have, that's your only concern.
my concern is I wouldn't approve it. I agreed with Brad, but these changes solely favor the disc golf clubs. The LPGA, the Professional Golf Association for the men, they're on 1 course, multiple days. Again, I think it's fair. I mean, they had more than a fair settlement of what you granted them. I don't agree with it, but that was what was passed. And for this to come back the next month is ridiculous. It should never have been on this agenda.
Couldn't agree more, Steve. Once again, procedural questions and issues and lack of consistency and just any number of things, given how certain people want to have things handled. It's so far removed and afield from how city operations should be managed and handled. It's unbelievable.
And also the lot for the portable bathroom that the city was looking at was sold. I can see why the resident bought it, to protect the surrounding properties from having a porta potty next to them. But I think, again, to me, it disturbs me that there's never comes into play conversation around the residents that abut the course. They put up with this 7 days a week. You allowed all these events, but that wasn't good enough. So now they're coming back again for more. So
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I think that this is a brand-new course too, and they're excited to play it.
Well,
and we're not really giving them the opportunity to have a 2-day tournament for what they, it's not for us to say how they should run their tournaments either. I mean, yeah, there are constraints to that, and I believe they're done at like 4 p.m. each day. So it's not like they're out there until, super late at night. But I think that, at this point, we haven't even given it a fair shot. We haven't allowed them to play a tournament that they're obviously really excited to play. And we have people who are working really hard to, raise funds. I know that talking to the disc golf, they want to do a charity tournament, to raise money for the food shelf. They want to incorporate community inside of it. I just don't feel like we've given them a fair opportunity to host a tournament on the new course.
they can host a tournament on the new course.
And they're asking for 1 day, or one event, something that is important to them.
We didn't have a permitting process before at all. I think this is supposed to, it's meant to kind of help things stay more organized and have some accountability for these tournaments instead of just having these people just go out and just have the tournaments. Which is what they've done in the past. So
You talk about fairness to
And
the
we have
disc
to
golf
approve it
club. How was this in any way fair from day one when residents knew of nothing about this until chainsaws started cutting down trees? Whether, again, we like it or not, we inherited such an absence of a plan and a process. We can sit here and talk about event permits, this, that, or the other thing. We haven't even gone back, in my mind, anyway, to try to figure out how to engage the residents, how to mitigate some of the issues. What does an overall plan for your use like this in the middle of a residential area look like? Which is every bit of the reason why I continue to be opposed to whether it's this event permit or most anything else when it comes to this. I find it very appalling that we're talking about, it's even being mentioned, of fairness to the disc golf club, when we have shown absolutely no fairness, no courtesy, no respect, anything of the like to the residents in that area. Zero. Not even so much as notification. Like, hey, what do you think about this potential use?
So we've gone down this road, so I would like to keep it to the event permit alone. I think that, there was just an opening for Park and Rec, and it's not like we've had a ton of people come to, join Park and Rec to help make these decisions. I think that there's obviously a level, or I don't know if it's a lack of interest or just not really wanting to be a part of it, but Park and Rec, I trust the people on that board, and clearly they brought this back and they said, we believe these changes should be made, and they've submitted it to us, and I trust them. And so if this is what they're asking us to approve, then I think we should approve it. And I think that we can always make adjustments. If this, let's say the tournament was, as written, well, we can look at, how did that go? Was there things that needed to change? Was there things that didn't go well? So I do think that some of this a little bit is trial and error when we're putting some of this stuff together, but I'm gonna go back to the fact that I trust the board. And I think that if this is what they've sent us to make changes on, then I think that that is what we should vote for.
The only reason they sent this to us is because Mr. Humphrey, his presentation, this is what he asked for. This has been his dream, per his words, for 6 years.
But they felt compelled enough to make the changes. So I do think, again, like we're asking them to do all of this upfront work and make all these considerations and make these decisions and listen to the presentations, whether that's presentations from residents who live on the course, or that's presentations for people who are in the disc golf. It doesn't matter. The fact is they felt like this was the right way to go. And I'm going to stand by by the committee. And I believe that we should, I don't want to make it a habit of them doing work, coming to us, asking for these things because they've done all the consideration and then us say no. I think adjustments can be made later, but I trust their judgment.
Well, it almost sounds like you're delegating some of the authority and decision-making capability that rests with the council to the Park and Rec Board.
Absolutely. I think that I want to give people the ability to make decisions for the people within their community. Yes,
It's not the Park and Rec's purpose and mission.
Then what is their purpose and mission?
To advance and otherwise fulfill the Park and Rec opportunities in this community. It is the city council that sets policy, that ultimately has the ability to decide what does and doesn't happen. That doesn't get delegated, I'm sorry, to the Park and Rec committee or to any other committee in that way. The buck stops with the council. It sounds to me very much like you are suggesting in certain ways that the Park and Rec committee can figure it out. And I don't, that's wrong.
Okay.
It's the city council that needs to figure it out.
I think with any committee though, Councilman Scott, like a committee makes recommendations to the council and then we vote on those. You are delegating activities to them for them to work on, and then they bring back recommendations. That is the role of a committee. And if we basically strip them of all the things, then what's the point in having the committee? If they can't do anything, if they can't bring this to us and say, what do you think? Then that's your role to say, I like it or I don't like it. That's your role.
Did the council not vote and approve the event permit at the May council meeting?
Yes.
But
These are living documents.
Has the
Then-
authority to make recommendations to the city council and make changes to that event permit.
See, that's where I disagree.
Councilman Maroney?
So, what I'm toying around with the idea of, I hear back, we want attorney's opinion. I am on. We have concerns about a 2-day event. Here's what I'm proposing, and I'll make this motion. To approve as amended, however, there will only be 3 one-day 3 events per additional beyond the 1 2-day. So instead of 1 per month, which gives them 5, plus a 2-day, well, 1 would be a 2-day, they can get 3 throughout the month, throughout the year, with 1 2-day.
So one of the 3? So
3
there's 4
single.
total or 3 total?
Let's do just 3 total. 1 2-day, 2 1 events. Again, the event could technically be 1 course
can I
and 1 course.
clarify, we're not-
Yeah, please.
2 course, not 2-day.
2 course, 2-day.
2 course.
Yes.
I think we need
So
to clarify.
as
It's 2
amended,
course.
yes.
As amended, but the course events that it says, it goes on to say course events are limited to 1 per month from May to September, which gives them 5 months to choose from. I'm going down to just 3 total events,
Between May 15 and October 15?
September 30th.
So, sorry, whatever the dates. May 15 and September 30th, okay.
Yep.
Do I
So
have a
3
second?
events that constitute 2 days on both courses?
But only one of those events can reserve both courses
On the same day.
on the same day. Yes.
Which is already in there, and effectively, this year, we would only have 3 events total anyway, so it would be a good gauge for.
Yes.
If
doing
they're
Is that your
approved-
motion, and then we'll
If-
discuss?
No, I want to continue on. This is a
If they're
full,
council.
this is it's a continuing thing. Modification of 90 persons, it's 90 persons per course per day, so if they have both courses on that event day, then it's 180. And if this moves forward, we can send this, along with everything that we want Mr. Scott's and Mr. Jensen seconding, to the attorney for review.
Clarification on that point. So it's going into effect immediately, but we want the attorney to review it, or doesn't go into effect until the attorney reviews it and you bring it back and you vote again?
Yep. So it goes into effect, it
Yes,
goes
to
into
which
effect.
one?
But we're still going to get the attorney's opinion, but we're going to,
Councilman Maroney, I need to know which one, not just yes.
Sorry. Approving the amendments, and with the approval of the amendments, this new permit, along with Mr. Scott's concerns that he wrote last year, or last month, will be forwarded on to the attorney.
But it goes into effect immediately.
correct.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I made it too confusing.
Brad, any further comment?
What, well.
Well, I guess my only other comment is I don't,
Excuse me.
Yeah, we need a second, sorry.
Question about the number is, sorry, we've probably talked
Okay,
about
I'm
this,
going to second the motion, and then we can discuss, because then, okay, I'm going to second it.
I might need the
Open
amendment.
for discussion now, so we can do that.
I think Mr. Scott. or did
I've said my piece at the last meeting. I'm done commenting on this.
You know, at this point, this council's never going to agree on anything to do with the disc golf course. I think we have different opinions. I think the residents that abut the disc golf courses, they're never taken into consideration. This is still totally slanted towards disc golf clubs. It's discussion at this point isn't going to accomplish anything.
Councilman Ball?
Yeah, sorry, I just had a question about the number. Did we discuss, and I don't, maybe you did at the Parks and Rec meeting, about the number of being 180 being necessary? I know we probably discussed the number in the past, but
180, the idea of the original 180 is, per what we heard, is that essentially it's, I think it's like 4 or 5 people per hole. So that's where you ended up with the 180s, it's 36 holes. times 5 per hole, because they do shotgun starts, that's where you get 180.
Okay, so it's calculated.
Well, that's what happens to
Yeah.
90 was.
Can we have?
Yeah, go ahead. Or- You could both come up at the same time.
The 90 came from originally, it's from that 180. The last one, event permit, only allowed one course to be solely used, so one was always open to the public.
Correct.
And so this modification allows for that one time a year. And I'll be honest with you guys too, we weren't all in agreement as a committee, but that's the motion that was carried forward as well. So this has been challenging, and I know more so for you guys, but this is what's before you. But the 90 is based on the number of people per hole that can start, but if you have 2 courses going, then you could essentially have up to 180.
So you have 2 different ways the tournament runs. Either a shotgun start where if you have a 90-person limit, you put 5 people per hole, everybody's playing at one time and you cycle through. The other format is a tee time where they start at, whatever, 9 in the morning, whatever time they choose, and about every 10 or 15 minutes, another card goes out. So somebody's on hole 1, basically when they get to hole 2, another card starts, on and on and on, and eventually you have people on every hole, and then when somebody finishes 18, the last person's coming, another card will be coming in on hole 1. So if you do a 1-day, 1-course tournament, 90 people is sufficient. You put 5 people on every card. That's what we've done every time in the past. All 7 tournaments that have been run here they functioned under that format. The tee time formats generally have more than 90 people on a course because they run, instead of having everybody playing one time over 2.5 hours, you can have people playing over a longer period of time using the course the same, but more people can filter through. And if you use 2 courses, technically speaking, you can have 180 people on both courses combined simultaneously. You could actually push through 250 to 300 some people if you want, but they're not all there at one time. So that's how that functions. As far as the,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
you could potentially have 90 on one course at one time, so
The most you would ever have on a course at one time would be 90,
okay, even with the,
even if you do tee times.
okay.
So for example,
So we could clarify it maybe to say 90 persons per course,
That's what Councilman Maroney's motion
Yeah.
did make.
not 180 per event, but just,
Yeah, he said 90
Yeah, it
persons
would
per
be-
course per day.
okay, thank you, that's helpful.
I played a tournament
Sorry,
2 weeks ago that had 140 people on a course in one day, but we only had 65 on the course at one time because the way the tee times worked. I was done before people I came with even started. I was done hours before them. As far as I think to clarify Maroney's comments about the tournaments, 3 tournaments allowed per year, one of which can be a 2-day 2-course, is I think what he's trying to say to simplify the terms.
Yep.
That's what I have.
Yes.
But that's just not disc golf clubs. That's if somebody wants to do a corporate event,
If you
a
want-
family
if-
event.
Sure.
Yeah.
I
They're
think-
not solely dedicated.
Correct. I think part of the confusion of this as well, I've just been watching from behind the scenes because this isn't my thing. The idea of this permit in the first place was to deal with sanctioned tournaments, not to deal with, I have a grandson who plays disc golf, and when he graduates high school, he's gonna wanna do a graduation party out there and bring all of his friends. So I'm supposed to tell him he can only bring 20 friends because we have family and friends. As a resident, I should be able to bring my family out there if I have 41, 60, 10 people.
But nothing's preventing you from doing that, Travis.
That wording right there says
The
events are
40
required. Yeah.
Was try to limit the exposure to the residents that
I'm a
abut the
resident of the
course.
city. I'm not allowed
Well,
to use my park.
I think what
Are
we
you
discussed in
using
the
the
last
park?
meeting
Yes.
is that
Is it open?
it probably
Right now
would
it
be
is.
limited to if it was a
But-
family, they couldn't, 41 people couldn't go
So
out
that's
there.
why that's a problem, but this in itself is designed to deal with the concept of a sanctioned event where somebody wants to reserve the course for themselves for whatever reason, whether it be a PDGA sanctioned event or you want to have a family reunion with 100 people out there. That's what this is for. This isn't to be 35 people want to go out there and play, that's too many, we don't want you here. Well, okay, fine, we're just 5 people in 7 different cars, I don't know you. This is for tournaments. So that if any tournament director wants to run a sanctioned event, you have to reserve our courses because this is what you have to do everywhere else in the world. You can't just come and use it.
Understood.
But you don't make a family do that.
That's
Thank
what
you.
Parks and Rec brought up
It's right
Whether it's corporate though.
Correct.
What they talked about, whether it's corporate.
Yeah, sure.
Or a reunion.
Corporate, yeah.
If you have large groups.
If you want to close it for your own personal use.
Correct.
Correct. That's why that second amendment was in there.
And you still, my other comments from last meeting that the council ignored, you have 50 parking spots.
I've been out there and people have very nicely parked on the side of the road. And there was no issues whatsoever.
Oh, it's perfectly acceptable to overflow in front of the homes that abut the course.
Perfectly fine last
Well,
year.
that's your opinion, Mayor Zerden.
Okay, so I think we're ready to vote. Anyone else have anything? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll go ahead and move on to the zoning code update.
Right. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We're on item 11B for the zoning code update, so if you want to reference your packets there. A little bit of update on the process. On April 26th, the city received 4 responses to the zoning code update RFP, and the responding firms were Bolton & Mank, HKGI, Landform, and WSB. And their proposals were posted online to be viewed on the city website and are still available there. Consultant interviews took place on May 7th with representatives of Bolton Mank, HKGI, and WSB making presentations to the consultant interview panel consisting of City Administrator David Chansky, myself, and 2 Planning Commission members, Roger Tice and Teddy Zierden. Representatives for the Landform firm were unable to attend, and the interviews also were posted live on the website and are available for viewing. As far as consultant selection, at the May 14th regular Planning Commission meeting, the consultant interview panel presented their findings from the interviews to the Planning Commission for consideration. The general consensus of the interview panel included the following summary: that the panel was very pleased with the outcome of the responses for the zoning code update RFP. Each of the responding firms were very competitive. The firms interviewed well and all seemed to have professional capacity to address the city's need for the zoning update project. One firm, HKGI, did rise to the top based on a number of the reviewing factors, which included closely meeting the RFP's requirements on project timing rollout, budget, and client accessibility, and the firm's past experience in working with cities with similar demographics as the city of Breezy Point. The Planning Commission then selected HKGI as the consultant recommendation to the City Council to lead the zoning update process. So based on the review of the consultant's qualifications, the Planning Commission recommends to the City Council the selection of HKGI to lead the consultant as the lead consultant for the Breezy Point Zoning Code Update Project. So if you have any questions, please let me know. The action we'd be looking for is for the City Council to select based on the recommendation of the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments, questions?
And the potential use of HKGI comes at a cost of, trying to find it here.
$120,000 is their not to exceed number. And they did include in that number is travel expenses to come up here, and that was one of the factors that played in their behalf, as well as that they were of the 4 firms, the one that presented the most willingness and anticipation of actually being physically here in Breezy Point.
What did we allow budget-wise for that?
125.
Okay.
And, like any project, at least those that I've been involved with over time, there's always going to be a level of cost increase. I think you just go into it kind of recognizing that. If it's not the case here, great. That does happen occasionally too, but I will tell you that's my significant concern at this point with where things are at is the cost. That feels extremely expensive. And sometimes I think one of the more difficult decisions that people or a group of people can make is to say, maybe we ought to wait, see what market forces are like, see where the economy is. If for no other reason, then maybe, hit the pause button on where we're at now and resolicit in a few months down the road. I think we all probably come into something like this with an idea of an amount in our minds that we think something like this could or should cost. And for a city the size of Breezy Point, for the zoning ordinances and land use that we have, that $120,000 in my mind is quite excessive of a cost. To me, this is a good example of where the finance committee, had we kept one in place, I think could have had a role in a level of interaction with staff, with the consultants that submitted proposals, even enough to say, look, we recognize this needs to be done. We understand that we've got this, that, and the other thing going on within our zoning ordinances that need to be brought up to date, modernized, what have you. But what part of this cost potentially, right, can city staff help out with? What are some of the activities that we would otherwise be paying a vendor to do where we could cut down some of the costs?
Out of curiosity, what were the other two bids? Just for reference.
Bolton and Mink was pretty much right at the 125, and they actually left out the master plan, not the comprehensive plan piece.
Okay.
And then WSB was at
107,497.
107,497.
So pretty much all right in the same ballpark.
I trust that you guys made the right decision, and
I think all this work it's very time consuming and expensive work to like draft code sections and like, I remember when we updated the comprehensive plan last time, I mean, that is a very time intensive project. So, I mean, I think this makes sense financially. We've talked multiple times about how our ordinances are out of date, how they need to be updated, how we should add new ordinances, for example, on the brush pile. I mean, all these things, you know, I mean, it would be nice to have some professionals being drafting those sections.
And put them in English?
yeah,
Well,
I know you can understand them, Rebecca, but
it'll make it easy for
I mean, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
they're written by lawyers and, you know, I support, I mean, we need to do this. It's long overdue. I mean, we budgeted, and it's important that we bring them up to the 21st century.
It also gets into redoing that comprehensive plan that we've talked, I don't want to say ill of, but we have talked ill of, you know, it's a
I think
document that needs to be
it's
refreshed.
appropriate to have changes there.
Yep. So this
As
encompasses it all.
Meant to be updated, yeah.
Yep.
Agreed. All right, do we have a
Is there any
motion?
reason why we didn't have a member or two of the council on the committee or part of the panel that was meeting with the firms? I can't remember.
So it was actually noticed as a special meeting of the planning commission, for the whole commission to be there. It was just that for whatever reason, 3 members on that day, and that was actually the day and time they chose, couldn't show up on that day and time. I don't know all the reasons why the other 3 couldn't be there, but it wasn't intended just to have the 2. So the other 3 were kept from being there, but did all watch the interviews prior to May 14th. So, and again, in this type of process, having gone through this before, the planning commission essentially is your stewards of the comprehensive plan and the zoning code. So it's general practice of this is they are the ones that are going to be essentially working through it hand in hand. I think that some of their discussion is once the consultant is selected and we start going through the process, is to have council involvement in some, as a dedicated liaison or whatever that is. And I know HKGI had a lot of ideas on what that looks like as well. So the intention is, as we move into the process, absolutely to have council involvement.
And once these are rewritten, and this is more a question for Peter, and adjustments to the comprehensive plan, is that now going to be our guide for how the city proceeds? It's kind of, right now it's sat on the shelf. It was redone, and basically it's sat on the shelf since it's, I don't know, how many years ago was that, Rebecca?
Oh, you're gonna date me.
But it was several, correct?
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, yeah, I think it's.
2020?
Isn't it, I don't know, I feel like the last time, I don't know if it's supposed to be updated every 10 years, or is it a 5? I don't remember, but it has been a little bit of time. I think we have worked on some of the things in the comprehensive plan over the last few years. So I wouldn't say that we don't pay attention to it at all, in the things that we do, but certainly it will come into play more when we are looking at zoning codes and updating the codes. I mean, definitely that's gonna be, that was not something we were doing the last time we did the comprehensive plan, so that, gonna have a huge impact on changes that we make to it, based on what decisions we make for what changes we make to the code, zoning, all those things, so.
And I'll just say too, it also, it also is kind of, what do you all want the implementation of the comp plan to be? I know some cities that are, I want to say, I don't know if they still do it, I think it was the city of Anoka, a former colleague who worked there said they had on their agenda items, if you're making a proposal, one of the boxes that you had to fill out is, how is this supported by the comprehensive plan? But that was a decision that the council said is, you present us something, we want to see how it's supported in the comprehensive plan. Now granted, not every single thing you come before is going to be supported in the comprehensive plan, because the comprehensive plan at the end of the day is a land use plan, not a technology plan. But that's how that council decided they want to implement it. So, if this council says we want to see more implementation, yeah, absolutely have that discussion of what does that look like, and if it's reporting and things like that, absolutely. We'll have that discussion.
Do you have any clarification, Peter or Dave, on page 219? Where in their time frame, they have the green stars, they have one of them towards the bottom identified as a public hearing, and the others are not identified in any way. Do you know if the intent?
So that public hearing there, that's the statutory public hearing when you adopt, we'll go to adopt it. So they're just identifying that's when that public, not that they aren't going to do public engagement throughout, they're just identifying that's the statutory adoption. So as they're going, essentially what they're kind of identifying is that August, September, that phase 5 that's the adoption phase. So I think they have.
There's some in phase 3.
There's 3, yeah.
Yeah, there's engagement, in phase
November.
1, phase 2. And again, is one of the things they even presented, engagement. Again, we can always do additional engagement as well, especially we have capabilities internally that as we go along, we can do additional engagement as well.
Yeah, and of course, that was, where my interest was, is to what extent are we involving the community, right? I mean, what opportunities are we affording over this period of time for maybe not just one notification to go out to the community, but multiple in advance of an event? And the way I look at it anyway, they're really just planning that one opportunity at the very end, which to me in a lot of ways is unfortunate. I think there's an opportunity there potentially being missed.
Do you have a motion?
It looks, I don't know, when you maybe talk to them more, but it looks like on 213, they talk about a lot of different ways they would look to do public outreach. There's face-to-face and virtual interactions, including stakeholder listening sessions, interviews, virtual engagement in a public hearing. Stakeholder groups to be involved in the project.
Well, I think too, with the changes we made with communication and social media, the newsletter, the e-newsletter, we have the opportunity to communicate that, make sure taxpayers, the residents are well aware.
Quarterly, we can have it the quarter before, so everybody gets that. And
Correct.
then there's no reason that they wouldn't have not heard about it. Okay, any other questions? I have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, so we will go on to staff reports.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a few this evening. Regarding Bushman Road, some I think there's been some inquiry about the easements and the communication and letters regarding the easement acquisition. I did talk with WSB. Those engagement letters should be in property owners' hands next week. And then they'll also be about the same time that they should be receiving those, staking them, as they said, going out and staking where those proposed easements are going to be. So those should be in people's hands next week. Woodseth issued all 722 pages of the bid documents on this proposed City Hall expansion and remodel to high-tech last Friday. High-tech is working on that, and then they should have a bid before the City Council for consideration in July. The Cemetery Commission has been working on a few projects. Obviously, they've got the butterfly release coming up on Saturday, July 20th. So it's the annual on the third Saturday in July is always when we do that. There's also two other projects they're working on. They've been talking about a memorial pavers project where they've been working through that. The idea there is put these pavers around the pavilion out there. The idea, again, just another way to enhance the cemetery, but also raising funds. People would purchase a paver. They would then be engraved again as a memorial to someone, or however they'd want to do that. So they're working on that project. They're also been in the planning projects to add a second columbarium out at the cemetery. The current columbarium has been steadily filling, and we've actually seen an uptick recently in those, and so they wanted to get ahead of that, as that is a lengthy process to acquire a second columbarium. Their inclination is to place it next to or near the existing columbarium. I know Councilmember Jensen can also speak to that as well. He's been attending those meetings and his involvement in that as well. The last thing that I know I have, before I hand it over, I think Chief Sandell has some comments as well, is that I did participate in a legislative recap with the League of Minnesota Cities today. 1 hour, we're only touching the surface on everything that came out of the legislative session that ended about a week and a half ago. That ended in a fury with a 2,800 page omnibus bill being adopted literally minutes before the session legally had to end, which is fantastic for the rest of us, because now we're going to spend weeks digging through it. And the league hasn't even they actually shared it. They printed it off, and they've been passing it and taking it home with them. So more to coming out of that. The one thing I do want to share that did come out of that is, as part of the 2023 legislative session, the legislature created a transportation advancement account. This is a account that's supposed to provide funding for transportations to municipalities. It's funded through a sales tax. It's actually in the metro, 7-county metro area. Per that, when that was created, 27% of the funds are to be distributed to small cities, so it's population under 5,000, and they have a formula distribution percentage. So while that was created and went into effect in beginning of the current fiscal year, it took a while for the tax to really get into place. We'll be getting our first payment in July. That first payment was for Breezy was going to be $12,663. Again, they recognize that's low, but that's partially the rollout of the sales tax. They expect that to be much higher next year. But the legislature did do a one-time $11.35 million payment into the account from the general fund, which will result in the city getting an additional $56,750 this year. So when we get our payment in January, so we are getting an additional almost $57,000 out of this legislative session. But a lot more to come as we figure out everything that was in there. There's a lot of election law that came out of there. I think I spent over 20 minutes reading through it and barely got even through a third of everything that they've passed, and it's a fun read. So a lot more to come out of that. So that's all I have, Council.
All right.
Okay, if you'd do me a favor, Administrator Chansky, and remind me what I was going to speak to.
I can't remember what you're going to speak.
I don't think think I had anything, but if you do, maybe I forgot something. I'll just say that the resort did in fact obtain a permit for fireworks. So what you heard earlier was not correct. That was the resort that was doing the boom booms. Other than that, I don't have anything else new.
I can't remember now.
Okay.
Anyone else? That's all staff has, Madam Mayor.
All right. Anybody else have?
I have one thing. I talked to Chief Sandell about this several months ago. Tomorrow morning, I'll be sitting out on Bushman Road with Officer Lorch and his radar gun to see how fast those dump trucks are really going.
Are you going to pull people over while you're sitting with them?
No, that's Officer Lorch's. But, you know, they always say they are going, you know, they look like they're going faster, but I'm factual based. I want to see it for myself.
Send us an email. Let us know what you find out.
Actually do a Facebook feed.
Yeah. But you know, it brings to light too that I've talked to, I think, literally every officer in the city, and virtually you can't do traffic stops. I mean, there's just no safe area on that road to accomplish that. But not going to take a lot of his time, but a couple dump trucks.
Find. All right. Anybody else? Okay. We'll move on to the agenda forecast.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, main point of this is we've been doing the last few months is talk about potential council workshop this month. There are 2 items that staff has identified as wanting to discuss with the council. They were also in the packet last month. One would be to discuss in preparation of getting a bid back from High Tech, start having a discussion about City Hall financing. We've had some high-level discussions previously last year with Baker Tilly. This would be now, again, taking that next level a little bit deeper. And then the other one would be to talk about the creation of a streets committee to be working on as part of the street CIP. So that was something that we discussed back in April, and the council decided you wanted to discuss, or May, sorry, we discussed at the May council meeting, you wanted to discuss that a little more, to discuss what would be the role of the committee, what would be expectations of the committee before a committee was created. Also, Mayor Zierden requested that the council discuss community center due diligence, which is another item that was tabled to a workshop during your April 1 council meeting. Following the practice that we've had, looking at the 3rd week of the month, that would be June 17 through 21. I will say that June 19th is Juneteenth, which is now a state holiday, so we can't have any public meetings on the 19th. So that one day is out.
I cannot do Thursday because that is the Relationship Safety Alliance Gala, so I could do Monday or Tuesday.
For evenings, I am open Monday. Tuesday, I would only be available from 3:30 to about 6, though.
I can make any Monday or Tuesday work.
Monday's the only day that's open for me.
I'm open all evening. Do we want to stick with the time that we concluded the last one at 6 p.m.?
I think so. It gives the public time to attend if they so choose.
I think that's worked better for my schedule too.
6 p.m. Monday the 17th.
Perfect.
And those 3 discussion items?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you.
The 3 items again were, Dave?
City Hall financing, Baker Tilly will participate in that discussion. The creation of a streets committee, and then community center due diligence.
Can we include on there at all the compost brush area, just considering the time of year it is, the activity that's out there? Might be timely for us to have more discussion and tackle that earlier than later.
I mean,
From a staff perspective, we're fine with that. We can make that happen.
Yeah, I've got no problem putting on the agenda.
Okay, we'll add that to the list.
All right,
All right, we'll go ahead, have a motion to adjourn.
so move.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.